Hello, my dear listeners. Have you been having trouble sleeping lately? Don't worry, I'm here to help. I'm going to share some mysterious stories with you to help you relax and drift off to sleep. You know, I truly love doing this. And by the way, thank you so much for sending me so many mysterious experiences. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss more mysterious stories. Good night. So, a while back, my friend Lena came to stay with us during a road trip she was taking with her new boyfriend. They'd stopped in Salem on the way, fully leaning into the Halloween mood, and picked up a couple of ghost hunting gadgets for a laugh. You know the kind. An EMF meter, a spirit box, all that stuff. When they got to the house, we spent ages messing around with everything. We walked those gadgets through the living room, the basement, up near the attic hatch, even around the fuse box, just to see if anything would happen. The spirit box gave us a bit of muffled radio noise here and there, but nothing that seemed meaningful, and the EMF meter barely reacted at all. Honestly, we were mostly just laughing at ourselves. It felt silly and harmless, and that was the whole fun of it. Later that night, we were all just lounging around, half tired, half wired, and Lena asked if I still had my tarot cards. I actually did. My mom had always loved anything paranormal, and years ago we'd tried figuring tarot out together. Neither of us ever became experts. We kind of decided tarot worked more like a mirror than magic, like therapy really. You see what you need to see in it. I've always been skeptical by nature, but in a curious way. I'm open-minded enough to admit it would be pretty amazing if there really was something more out there. So I dug out the old deck and the little guidebook that always came with me as backup. I still don't know all the meanings by heart, so that book is basically my comfort blanket. I started with Lena, laying out a few cards and checking the meanings as I went. And almost immediately, I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Because the message I was getting, plain as day, was basically, this man sitting in your living room is not the one for her. It pointed to a relationship that wouldn't last, and some huge decision coming around Christmas. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh no, he's probably going to propose. She's going to want to say no. There is absolutely no way I can say any of that out loud. So I panicked. I did what any deeply unqualified fake tarot reader would do. I completely bottled it. I gave her some vague, fluffy nonsense instead. Just enough to get through it without detonating the evening. Thought I'd got away with it. Then she smiled and said, "Do him next." And I thought, oh, come on. I've only just met this guy. But everyone was in good spirits, so I said fine and started laying out cards for him. The second I did, everything changed. One minute I was joking around, completely normal. The next, I felt absolutely awful. Not anxious in a vague way, physically awful. My head started pounding, my hands went clammy, and I felt this wave of sickness come over me so suddenly it was frightening. I remember thinking, brilliant. I'm about to have my first ever panic attack in front of my friend and her brand new boyfriend. Fantastic timing. I dropped my eyes to the guidebook, trying to focus, trying to find something, anything to say. But I couldn't. My mind just went blank. My head was throbbing harder and harder, and with every pulse, there was one word in my mind. Mum. Just that. Over and over. Mum. 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 I tried to speak around it, tried to say literally anything else, but I couldn't get the words out. It was the strangest feeling. I felt like my tongue had gone thick and heavy, like my mouth just would not cooperate. And the only word I could say, the only one that seemed allowed through was, Mum. And the instant I said it out loud, everything stopped. Just like that. I looked up, and Lena was staring at me with these huge, wide eyes, like she was on the verge of tears, asking if I was all right. And I was. By then, I really was, but only just. I told her I thought I might have had some kind of panic attack. Then she held up the EMF meter. Apparently, while I'd been having my little meltdown, she'd quietly switched it on. The needle was going wild, absolutely buried in the red, jerking around at the top end. And she just looked at me and said, very calmly, "You are not yourself." We all kind of laughed, because what else do you do with something like that? It was too weird not to laugh. Her boyfriend, though, barely reacted, just sat there like nothing had happened. Totally unreadable. So I tried to lighten the mood. I made a few jokes, looked up toward the ceiling like I was addressing the universe, and said, "All right then, if that was Mum, I'm sorry for making a mess of your message and nearly having a panic attack. But nice to meet you." He laughed. We all laughed. The tension broke a bit. And then, right at that moment, the spirit box, which Lena had turned back on, spoke. Clear as anything, in a woman's voice, it said, "Perfect." And that was the moment every single one of us completely lost it. So this happened in Southern California a few years back. Back then, my old friend Marco and I had this habit of getting a little lit and hiking the trails after sunset. Out there, away from the traffic and noise, it honestly felt like meditation. Just quiet, darkness, and a chance to breathe. One evening, we parked near the trail lot right before the sun went down and walked maybe 3/4 of a mile in. We had a usual little spot we liked, nothing special, just a concrete retaining wall where we could sit and relax. The trail stretched ahead of us. There was a narrow creek off to the left, and on the right, there was this side path that didn't really go anywhere. Behind us, the main trail kept winding up the hill, and right behind the wall stood this tall tree that kind of loomed over the whole area. We got settled in, lit up, put on some low music, and just started talking. For the first half hour, everything felt normal, peaceful. No one else around, no movement, no voices, just the two of us sitting out there in the fading light. Then we heard it. At first, it sounded almost like someone calling out to a friend in the distance, kind of a drawn-out cooing sound. If you've spent enough time around LA, you know the kind of sound I mean. Marco and I both went quiet and started scanning the trail, expecting somebody to come walking toward us. But the sound didn't stay in one place. It started out ahead of us, then shifted off to the left, almost like it was moving in this strange zigzag pattern. We kept waiting to see a person, or an animal, or anything really, but there was nothing. And the closer it got, the weirder it sounded. Not like any owl or bird I'd ever heard. The only way I can describe it is like something between an injured owl and a completely unnatural imitation of one. It was off. Deeply off. Like whatever was making it didn't fit the sound at all. By then, it was getting properly dark. The sound stopped for a moment, and everything went still. Then suddenly, right above our heads, from the tree behind us, this loud, sharp, drawn-out coo blasted down at us. I didn't even think. I just grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, pointed it straight up into the branches, and shouted, "Hello?" Nothing. No eyes reflecting back. No bird shifting in the leaves. No person. No animal. Just total silence. Marco had already slung his bag on and stepped forward like he was ready to bolt. Meanwhile, I had all my stuff spread out beside me. My notebook, water, everything. And I swear those 10 seconds it took me to throw it all into my bag felt way longer. I was standing right under that tree, right under whatever had made that sound, and after I yelled and shined the light up there, it never made another noise. That was the moment the whole thing stopped feeling weird and started feeling wrong. We took off running. Full sprint down that dirt trail, straight back to the cars, no stopping, no looking back. To this day, I'm still amazed neither of us ate it in the dark, because we were moving fast. When we finally got back, we were standing there by the cars trying to make sense of it, doing that thing where you nervously laugh and keep asking, "What was that?" But even then, it wasn't over. There was a ditch in front of the parking area, full of brush and little trees, and from down in there, we suddenly heard this loud, aggressive snarl. That one could have been a raccoon or an opossum, sure, but at that point, it just felt like the place was telling us to leave. So we did. And whatever that was, I have never heard anything like it before or since. So yeah, that's one I still think about. And honestly, I still don't know what was in that tree. I'm a 31-year-old guy, and I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. I know that probably sounds unrelated at first, but it really does connect to what I'm about to tell you. For as long as I can remember, my mind has always been moving fast. I've dealt with the usual stuff: trouble focusing, constant thoughts bouncing around, moving a little awkwardly when I'm distracted, all of that. But there was also something else. Ever since I was young, I'd catch what looked like a person out of the corner of my eye. It would happen in the middle of ordinary moments. I'd be doing something, glance up, and for a split second, I'd think someone was standing there or walking past. Then I'd look straight at it, and there'd be nothing there. No one. Just empty space. When I was younger, I brought it up to my psychologist. He told me it could happen with ADHD, that my brain was trying to process too much at once, and sometimes it would sort of fill in the blanks. He said I'd probably grow out of it. I never did. What I did do was get used to it. Over time, it stopped feeling shocking and just became part of life. Weird, sure, but familiar. I stopped mentioning it. Honestly, it felt too strange to explain, so I mostly kept it to myself. A few years later, I met my wife, Mara. After we'd been together for a while, I finally told her about it. The conversation only came up because there had been a few times when I asked if she'd just walked into a room, and she'd say she hadn't even been nearby. After enough of those moments, she looked at me like, "Okay, why do you keep asking that?" So I told her, not in detail, just enough, that sometimes I thought I saw someone in my peripheral vision. I never really described it, and after that, we didn't talk about it again. Then, when we were both around 29, something happened. I had just gotten home from work and went into the kitchen to throw together something to eat. I heard Mara coming from the living room, and as I looked toward one doorway, I caught movement in the other one. That same familiar shape, that same passing figure. I turned toward it automatically, then looked back. Mara was standing in the opposite doorway, staring at me. And she asked, "Did you see that?" I remember just looking at her and saying, "See what?" She paused, like she wanted to say more, but then she brushed it off. And somehow, we both let it go. We never brought it up again. Until last night. It was around 1 in the morning. I woke up half asleep to use the bathroom. The bathroom is attached to our bedroom, and the bed faces the door. Mara was still awake, lying there, scrolling on her phone, with the lamp turned low so I could get around without my glasses. I got up, headed toward the door, and there it was again. That shape. Same as always. At this point, I'm so used to it that I barely reacted. I just shifted around it without even thinking, went into the bathroom, came back, and got into bed. Then suddenly, Mara turned the light up and grabbed my arm. I was groggy, confused, trying to figure out what was going on. I had work in a few hours, so I really wasn't all there yet. But when I looked at her, she was pale, completely rattled, trying hard to keep it together, but scared. She looked right at me and said, in this shaky voice, "I saw it." And I asked, still half asleep, "Saw what?" That was the moment I fully woke up. Because the way she described it, it was exactly right. exactly how I've seen it my whole life, and I had never described it to her like that. Not once. So now I don't really know what to think. When it was only me seeing it, I could write it off. I could live with it. I had lived with it. It had become background noise, basically. Creepy sometimes, sure, but manageable. But now she's seen it too. Now she's scared to be alone. She's talking about moving. And I don't even know how to explain to her that moving might not matter, because this thing hasn't belonged to one house or one room. It's been with me for as long as I can remember. That's the part I can't stop thinking about. Not that she saw it. Not even that she described it perfectly. It's the fact that she said it was standing there, waiting by the door, waiting for me. I was in 6th grade when this happened, and even now, years later, I still can't really explain it in a way that makes sense. It was me and my 2 friends, Mason and Sarah, walking home after school one afternoon. We were cutting past the neighborhood park like we always did when we saw this bunch of kids tearing out from that direction, full speed, like something had scared them half to death. At first, we thought maybe there was a fight or somebody got caught doing something stupid. But when we got closer, it was obvious they weren't coming from the playground or the basketball court. They were running from the woods behind the park. And because we were 12 and not nearly as smart as we thought we were, we decided to go look. We'd never really gone into those woods before. Everybody knew about them, though. There were always rumors. Old stories about high schoolers hanging out under this huge bridge back there, partying, doing drugs, whatever. But people had supposedly stopped going because they said squatters were living out there. At the time, that just sounded creepy enough to make it interesting, so we kept walking. We went deeper than I realized at the time, maybe close to a mile in, and eventually we found the bridge. It was massive, all concrete and rust and shadows underneath. The whole place felt abandoned in the worst way, like it had been left behind but was still somehow being watched. We moved farther under the bridge, and that's when we saw them. 3 symbols drawn on the ground, laid out like ritual circles with stars in the middle. I don't know what they actually were, but to a bunch of kids standing in the dark, they looked satanic. That's the only word I had for it then, and honestly, it's still the word that comes to mind now. The second we saw them, the mood changed. You know that feeling when your stomach drops and every part of you suddenly knows you shouldn't be there? That's what it felt like. None of us even argued. We just turned around and started heading back. Then a rock slammed against the side of the bridge. It was so loud it made all 3 of us jump. We spun around immediately, expecting to see someone there, but there was nothing. No movement, no voice, no one. That's when we ran. At first it felt normal, just blind panic, crashing through leaves and roots and branches. But after a while, something started to feel wrong. We should have made it out by then. Instead, every turn led to more trees, more dark, more nothing. We kept making random lefts and rights, trying to remember where we came from, until finally we stumbled into the same clearing again. The bridge. We had somehow made a full circle. By then, it was getting late. I remember trying to call my mom, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone, but there was no service. Mason checked his too, same thing. Our batteries were dying anyway. We were scared, trying not to show it, but it was obvious. The sun was gone, and the woods looked completely different at night. Then we started hearing something moving behind us. Not just in one direction either. Branches snapping from different sides, like something was circling us. Fast. Too fast. We kept turning around, trying to see through the dark, and then all at once I realized Sarah wasn't with us anymore. She was just gone. I remember yelling her name over and over. Mason was shouting too. We searched everywhere we could without really knowing where we were going. Every second felt longer than it should have. I don't know exactly how much time passed, maybe close to an hour, but it felt endless. And then we heard her scream. We thought she was dead for a second. I really did. We shook her, called her name, begged her to wake up, and eventually she opened her eyes. But she was not okay. Not even close. Sarah was always the bright one in our group, always laughing, always making everybody feel less scared. But in that moment, she looked completely broken. She couldn't speak. She was trembling so hard her teeth were chattering, and her heart was pounding so visibly I could see it in her chest and throat. She curled up into herself and just stared, like whatever she'd seen had taken something out of her. We knew we couldn't stay there, so Mason helped her up and kept an arm around her while we kept moving. We didn't have a plan anymore. We were just walking, hoping the trees would finally open up. At one point, I heard a voice. It was low, quiet, almost like a whisper right near us. Leave. I stopped for half a second, but Mason said it was probably the wind, and honestly, I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. A few minutes later, we started hearing those sounds again. Rustling, snapping branches, movement from too many directions at once. And then I looked off to my left and saw it. There was a figure standing behind a tree, just barely visible, like it was leaning out enough for us to notice it. We ran immediately. I didn't think. I didn't say anything. I just ran. And I could hear it behind us. Heavy steps, branches cracking under its feet. Sarah started crying, over and over, saying, "Not again, not again, not again." And hearing that come from her made everything worse, because it meant something had happened while she was missing, something she never told us. We kept running until, out of nowhere, we saw the edge of the park. I have never felt relief like that in my life. We burst out of the woods and onto the grass, just gasping and stumbling, and then all three of us turned around. Standing at the tree line was this tall, shadowy figure, easily 7 feet, maybe more. It didn't move toward us. It just stood there, perfectly still, staring straight at us. And then it stepped back and disappeared into the dark. I'm 23 now, and I still think about that night more than I want to admit. None of us ever really talked about it afterward. Mason tried to act like it was just some messed up night in the woods, but even he never went back. And Sarah, whatever happened to her out there, it stayed with her. As for me, I've never stepped foot near that park again. Not once. And honestly, I don't think I ever will. I want to tell you something that still unsettles me, even now. And to be honest, I've never really been the kind of person who believes in paranormal stuff. I'm naturally skeptical. I always look for a rational explanation first. But every now and then, something happens that doesn't sit right with you, no matter how much you try to explain it away. This was one of those things. I hadn't thought about it in years. It was like my mind had tucked it away somewhere deep and decided not to revisit it. But not long ago, I was talking with someone, and the memory came rushing back so clearly that I got goosebumps all over again. That cold, prickly feeling just came right back. This happened a long time ago, when I used to babysit for my cousin's 2 girls. The older one, Mia, was maybe 7 or 8, and the younger one, Lila, was around 4. Lila was a very sensitive little kid. Every time her parents left, she'd get really upset and cry for hours. Sometimes she'd get frustrated and lash out too, but honestly, I mostly just felt sorry for her. She seemed deeply unhappy in a way I couldn't quite explain. They were living in a fairly new house at the time. It had only been built not too long before they moved in. Everything looked normal, clean, modern, bright during the day. But at night, that house felt different. It's hard to explain. There was just something off about it. Little noises, strange shadows in the corners. That quiet kind of atmosphere that makes you feel uneasy, even when nothing obvious is wrong. Usually, once the girls were asleep, I'd sit downstairs, watch TV, and check on them every so often. Mia's room was on the second floor, and Lila's room was up on the third. My cousin's bedroom was across the hall from Mia's. One night, after I'd been babysitting there for a while, something happened that I've never forgotten. I went upstairs to do my usual check. Mia was sound asleep, nothing unusual there. Then I went up to Lila's room. When I walked in, I stopped for a second because there was a chair sitting on top of her bed, and she was asleep, curled up underneath it. It was odd, sure, but kids do strange things all the time, so I didn't think too much of it. I quietly lifted the chair off the bed, set it back where it belonged, and went downstairs. She never even stirred. A while later, I went up again. Same thing. The chair was back on the bed, and Lila was under it again. That's when I started feeling a little uneasy. I remember just standing there for a second, staring at it, trying to think of how that could have happened. But again, I took the chair down and left the room. Later on, I did one last check before her parents got home. And once again, the chair was on the bed. At that point, I was genuinely rattled. I didn't want to leave it in the room anymore, so I picked it up and carried it downstairs with me, thinking at least that would put an end to it. But as I came down the stairs, I suddenly got that unmistakable feeling that somebody was watching me. You know that feeling when the back of your neck tightens and every little instinct in your body goes on alert? That's exactly what happened. I turned my head and noticed that my cousin's bedroom door, across from Mia's room, was slightly open. Just barely. Only enough to leave a narrow crack. The room was dark, so I couldn't clearly see inside, but I had this overwhelming sense that there was someone standing there, looking directly at me. Then suddenly, the bedroom door slammed shut. Not slowly, not like it drifted on its own. It slammed. At that exact moment, Mia woke up and stepped out into the hallway, rubbing her eyes. So I knew it wasn't her. And I had just been upstairs with Lila, who was still asleep. I was terrified. I mean, truly terrified. I must have looked it too, because Mia took one look at me and asked what was wrong. Before I could even explain, she glanced toward her parents' room and gave me this look I still remember. It was this calm, knowing expression, like she already understood. Then she said, very matter-of-factly, that I didn't need to look in there, that it was better if I just went back downstairs. That made everything worse, because it didn't sound like a child imagining something. It sounded like someone who was already used to it. I asked her to come downstairs with me, and she did. I didn't want to be alone, not even for a second. Not too long after that, her parents came home. I got out of there, and I never babysat for them again. I did try to bring it up later with my cousin. More than once, actually. But every time, she'd brush it off and say something like, "I know, just leave it alone." And honestly, that's the part that still gets to me. Because what does that mean? What was going on in that house? Why did Mia seem to understand? Why did my cousin act like it was something already known, something not worth discussing? I still don't have an answer, and even now, thinking about that night gives me chills. So, I'm not really sure how this is going to sound out loud, and honestly, part of me still wonders if I'm just overthinking everything. I do have OCD, so I know my brain can latch onto things and make them feel bigger and heavier than they probably are. But this has stayed with me for so long that I finally felt like I needed to say it out loud to someone. A while back, I had this dream that genuinely unsettled me in a way I still can't explain. I've always had really vivid dreams, the kind that feel almost too real, like I've actually lived through them. And every now and then, I'll get these strange little flashes or feelings when I'm awake, like something is about to happen before it does. I don't really know what to make of any of that, and I'm not someone who knows much about paranormal stuff, so I've mostly just kept it to myself. In the dream, I was at this little off-campus house connected to my old university. It wasn't a place I'd ever actually been, but it felt familiar in that dream way, like my mind had built it out of pieces of real places. I remember starting out on the back porch with someone, and they kept urging me to come inside. Not aggressively, just insistently, like they really wanted me to see something. So eventually I went in with them. Inside, it felt like there was some kind of small gathering going on. Nothing wild, just a handful of people standing around, talking, moving from room to room. Some of them were people I recognized from real life, and some weren't. At first, everything felt normal enough. I was in one of the rooms chatting with a few people about completely ordinary things, and then my former advisor, though in the dream I'll call her Dr. Mara instead of her real name, walked over to a bookshelf and pulled out a book. She looked at me like she knew something I didn't, and asked whether I wanted to see my future, like my career, my life, where I was headed. And then, the dream shifted, the way dreams do, suddenly and without warning. All at once, everyone was looking for a different book. It was like the room changed emotionally before it changed visually. People got frantic. They were searching shelves, stacks, corners, drawers, everywhere. There was this feeling that the book mattered a lot, even though I didn't know why. At one point, they video called this older woman who seemed to know something about it, and she kept saying, almost casually, "It's in there. Keep looking," like she was completely certain. Then, they found it. The second that book appeared in front of me, I felt this huge wave of dread. Just pure dread. I can still remember that feeling more clearly than some real memories. The book was large, very old-looking, and completely black. Not dark blue or brown black, just black. That alone felt strange. I love books. I own way too many, and there was something deeply wrong about the way this one looked. It had these metal details on the cover and spine, almost like clasps or bindings, like it was being sealed shut or reinforced somehow. It looked heavy, serious, almost ceremonial. And on the front, there was only one word: Archaon. Even saying that now makes me uncomfortable. I don't know why that word bothered me so much, but in the dream it felt charged, like I was looking at something I absolutely was not supposed to open or even know about. And right when I saw it, right at the peak of that horrible feeling, the dream ended. That would have been strange enough on its own, but what made it stick was what happened not too long after. It was black, and the second I really looked at it, I got hit with this awful flash of recognition. It wasn't exactly the same book from the dream, not perfectly, but it was close enough to make my stomach turn. I remember just standing there staring at it, feeling that same cold panic rising up again. I opened it and checked the first few pages, and the back pages too, searching for that word from the dream, hoping I wouldn't find it. I didn't. But even so, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something wrong with it. I ended up shoving it into a drawer where I kept gifts and random things I meant to deal with later, and it stayed there for months. Every time I remembered it was there, I felt uneasy. Eventually, I took it out and got rid of it. I know that probably sounds dramatic, but I was honestly scared of it by that point. It felt cursed, or at least tied to something I didn't understand and didn't want near me. And then there was the part that made everything feel even stranger. Around that same time, my dad, who is deeply religious, more than I am, had a disturbing dream of his own. In his dream, he walked up to a house where some kind of gathering was happening and knocked on the door. When the door opened, it was the devil standing there. Now, my dad is the kind of person who avoids anything even remotely connected to that kind of imagery, so for him to have a dream like that was completely out of character. It rattled him. And what really got to me was that his dream happened either the same night as mine or within a day of it, very close together. My mom may have dreamed something odd too, but she almost never remembers her dreams long enough to say. So ever since then, I've had this lingering feeling that there was some meaning to it, or at least some connection I can't explain. Maybe there isn't. Maybe it was just a vivid dream that collided with coincidence and my own anxiety. I know that's possible. But even now, when I think about that house, that search, that black book, and that single word on the cover, I get the same chill I felt in the dream. I still don't know what it was supposed to represent. I don't know why it felt so forbidden, or why finding that real book afterwards scared me as much as it did. I just know the whole thing has been sitting heavy with me ever since, and I've never really known who to tell. So I guess I'm saying it now exactly the way it's been living in my mind. Confusing, unsettling, and impossible to fully shake. So I need to tell you about something that happened, because even now, it feels too meaningful to keep to myself. A few nights ago, I had a dream. I was sitting in my grandmother's sitting room with her. There were other people there too. Soft, indistinct shapes I somehow recognized as relatives. Maybe cousins, maybe aunts and uncles. But they faded into the background. What stood out clearly was the room, and her. She looked at me with those bright gray-blue eyes and asked very simply, "Why don't you come see me anymore?" And the truth is, that question cut straight through me. She wasn't just my grandmother. She was also my godmother, and in many ways, she felt like a second mother to me. We'd always been deeply close. But after her partner died years ago, she moved in with one of her sons so she wouldn't be alone. Over time, that home became a hard place to walk into. The atmosphere felt cold, uncomfortable, heavy. I live in another country, so at first I still visited often, then every few months, then less and less. Eventually, I think part of me just shut down emotionally because it hurt too much. So in the dream, I answered her honestly. I said, "Grandma, of course I want to see you, but when I come, I feel like I shouldn't be there. I feel like a burden. It never feels warm or welcoming. In another situation, I'd come see you all the time." At first, she looked serious, but then her face softened. She gave me this gentle, knowing smile and said, "Yes, yes, I understand." Then I woke up. It was 3 a.m. I almost never remember my dreams, so this already felt unusual. I lay there for a while, thinking about it, and then drifted back to sleep. At 5:30, my father called me, crying. My grandmother, my godmother, had passed away around 2:30 that morning. It was sudden. Her heart gave out while she was getting up during the night. They found her later, and by the time help arrived, there was nothing anyone could do. The moment I heard, the dream came flooding back in full. And honestly, in that instant, I knew. She had come to me before she left. We hadn't been able to have that conversation in life, so she found another way. She said what she needed to say, and I said what I needed to say. We understood each other. We made peace. That's why, as strange as it may sound, I don't feel consumed by guilt. I feel sad, of course, but underneath that, I feel calm, deeply calm. I truly believe she came to say goodbye and to let me know that we were okay. And then, as if that weren't enough, later that morning, around 7, I said out loud, half teasing, half sincere, "All right, Grandma, if that was really you, send me one more sign." I had barely finished speaking when the TV in the background announced, "And today, we celebrate Grandmother's Day." I just froze. Then I started laughing. I looked up and said, "Okay, message received, loud and clear." Love you, Moraine. Rest easy. So, I have this pair of rings I've worn since I was about 14, and at this point, they've been with me for nearly 3 decades. They mean a lot to me, so much so that I almost never take them off. The other morning, I left the house really early, and while I was driving, I suddenly realized my rings weren't on my fingers. My stomach just dropped. I had no idea where they could have gone, and I immediately started panicking. When I got back, I searched everywhere I could think of. I looked under furniture, behind the bed, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, in the trash, in my car, and even outside around the porch and yard. I checked every place that made sense, and when nothing turned up, I got more and more upset. Now, my grandmother passed away years ago, but I've always had this feeling that she still helps me find things when they go missing. I know that might sound strange to some people, but in that moment, I stopped and quietly asked her to help me bring the rings back. After that, I kept searching, but this time I started looking in places that honestly didn't make much sense, and somehow, that's exactly what led me to them. I found my ring sitting on a windowsill in a part of the house I barely even use, except maybe once in a while to tend to a plant or open the blinds. I hadn't been over there recently at all. I still can't explain why I would have taken them off there. Unless I was sleepwalking or something, it just doesn't add up. But deep down, I really feel like my grandma helped me. And this isn't the first time I felt that way. Years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I was with a longtime boyfriend, and on my birthday he took me out to dinner. That night, I wore this necklace that had belonged to my grandmother. It was delicate, a little long, and really special to me. On the drive home, we pulled off somewhere private and ended up fooling around in the car. Before that, I remember taking off the necklace because I didn't want it to get tangled or broken. I was sure I'd tucked it into my purse. But later, when I reached for it, it was gone. We tore the car apart looking for it. I searched everywhere, under the seats, between the cushions, in every pocket of my bag. Nothing. I went home completely heartbroken, convinced I had lost something I could never replace. Then, a few months later, I was standing in my parents' room talking with my mom, and I happened to glance at the closet door. Hanging there was the necklace. I just stared at it. I asked my mom where she found it, and she told me she hadn't found it at all. It had just appeared there one day, and she assumed it belonged to either me or my sister. To this day, I cannot explain how that necklace could have gone from the car that night to my parents' bedroom closet. It makes no logical sense to me. And honestly, that's exactly how I feel about the rings showing up on the windowsill. Maybe there's a simple explanation. Maybe there isn't. All I know is that in both moments, when something precious was missing and I felt helpless, it somehow found its way back to me. And in my heart, it feels like my grandma still looks out for me. So this happened when I was about 6, sometime in the mid-90s, and I still remember it like it happened yesterday. I was curled up in my mom's bedroom late at night, watching TV with her while the rest of the house had gone completely still. The screen was the only real light in the room, throwing those soft, flickering shadows across the walls. We were watching one of those goofy home video shows, laughing together, and for a while everything felt normal. Cozy even. Back then, we were living at my grandma's old house. It had that kind of heavy nighttime quiet that makes every tiny sound feel bigger than it is. The floorboards creaked, the air always smelled a little dusty, and the whole place had this strange, worn-down feeling to it, like it was carrying 100 stories it hadn't told yet. At some point, I got up to go to the bathroom. I stepped out into the hallway, and the wood floor was cold under my feet. The living room was off to my left, almost completely dark except for a little bit of moonlight slipping in through the curtains. Now, my grandma had this habit of sleeping on the couch instead of in her bed, She used to say she hated sleeping in the bedroom, though as a kid I never really understood why. So there she was, asleep against the wall, snoring softly like always. And then I saw him. I just froze. It looked like a man was coming straight out of the wall, not opening a door, not stepping around anything, just moving through it. He passed right through my grandma like she wasn't even there, and kept going across the room. He was tall, really tall to my little kid eyes, and he had on this old-fashioned hat, more like a dark fedora than anything else, and a long coat that hung off him in this strange way. But the part I can never forget, the part that still gets under my skin, was what he was made of. He didn't look solid. He looked like television static. Not like a normal person, not like a shadow. His whole body had that grainy, flickering black and white look, like a dead channel on an old TV. It was almost like the air around him was buzzing. I remember staring and thinking, this can't be real. I actually pinched myself because I thought maybe I was dreaming, but I wasn't. He kept moving, calm and deliberate, crossed the room, stepped up onto the little side table near the couch, and then just disappeared through the opposite wall. Just like that. I was absolutely terrified. I wet myself right there in the hallway because I was too scared to move. Then I finally snapped out of it and ran back to my mom's room, crying so hard I could barely talk. I jumped into the bed and yelled, "Mom! Mom! There's a man in the living room!" She sat straight up, startled, and asked me what I was talking about. I was sobbing, trying to explain this man made of static, with the hat and the coat, walking through the walls like it was the most natural thing in the world. My mom took my hand and walked with me back down the hall. I remember that walk feeling so much longer than it really was. When we got to the living room, my grandma was still asleep on the couch like nothing had happened. My mom turned on the lamp beside her, and the light woke her up. Then my mom told her what I'd seen. And my grandma just looked at me with this calm little smile, like none of it surprised her at all. She said, "Sweetheart, that was your grandfather. He used to wear that hat and coat whenever he went out at night to have a drink." And there he was. Same face, same coat, same hat. I remember just staring at that picture, feeling cold all over, because I knew what I'd seen. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't made it up. Somehow, that night, I saw someone from my own family who was supposed to be gone. And honestly, even now, I still don't have a good explanation for it. I just know that for one brief moment in that old house, the dead didn't feel very far away at all. I've had sleep paralysis before, but there are two experiences that have stayed with me in a way I still can't really shake. The first time happened in early spring of 2021, just after sunrise, somewhere around 6:30 in the morning. I was asleep, and as I started trying to wake up, I slipped straight into that awful in-between state where your mind is alert, but your body won't move. It felt like I was fighting to pull myself awake, blinking hard, trying not to sink back under. And then, in those blinks, I saw them. There were 4, maybe 5, small gray beings in my room. 2 of them were right up close to my face, 1 on either side, and at least 2 more were standing near the foot of the bed, just watching me. I have this faint memory that there may have been another one standing off in the far right corner, but that part is less clear. One of the ones near me seemed to be holding something, some kind of object, and it was close to my face or chest. I still couldn't tell what it was. What I remember most clearly is the way they reacted when I started fighting the paralysis. They looked startled, almost panicked, like they hadn't expected me to be aware of them. One of them, on my left side, moved suddenly and sharply, almost like it jerked back toward the window beside my bed. And through all of it, I had this intense sensation that I was lifting, like my body was floating even though I was still trapped there. After what felt like forever, maybe a minute or two, I finally managed to move again. I sat straight up in bed, blinking, trying to get my bearings. And just like that, they were gone. At the time, I didn't let myself dwell on it too much. I'd never fully believed in aliens, and I told myself maybe it was just a one-time thing, some terrifying sleep paralysis hallucination that happened to feel more real than anything I'd ever experienced. But then it happened again. This was in 2026, just a couple of nights ago, around 1 in the morning. Same kind of beginning. I woke into sleep paralysis, completely still, fully aware. But this time, it was different. There was only one figure. This one was taller than the others had been, more medium height, and something about the presence felt different too. I got the strange impression it might have been female, though I know that sounds ridiculous, and honestly, I have no idea whether that even makes sense. It was wearing something that looked like a dark fitted suit, almost like a flight uniform, and unlike the others, it didn't seem alarmed at all. It was calm. It just stood at the end of my bed, staring at me in this steady, focused way, almost as if it was observing me, studying me. What surprised me was that I didn't panic the same way I had the first time. I didn't struggle to break out of it. I just looked back. I couldn't move, but I stayed there, completely locked in, staring at this being while it stared at me. And behind it, somehow, there was what looked like a UFO in my room, as if it had simply appeared there. That part had never happened before. We stayed like that for about a minute, maybe a little longer. Then I blinked, and it was gone. The room was empty, the paralysis lifted. I sat up in bed again, heart racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. This happened close to a year ago, maybe a little less. It was around the end of 9th grade, right before finals, on a school night. Back then, my sleep schedule was completely wrecked. Where I live, we have to get up ridiculously early for school, around 5 in the morning, and I was the kind of person who would still be awake at 1 or 2 a.m., running on maybe 3 hours of sleep if I was lucky. That night, I remember feeling off. Not exactly sad, not exactly angry, just wrong. Restless, heavy. Around 1:30 in the morning, I was lying in bed, scrolling through YouTube, trying to distract myself. To make sense of what happened, I need to explain the layout a little. Right outside my bedroom was this small sitting area with a huge frosted window, maybe 7 feet tall. It didn't have curtains, so even though you couldn't clearly see through it, it still gave off this strange, exposed feeling at night. If you stood in that space facing away from the window, my bedroom door was right behind you. Inside my room, my bed sat a little way in from the door, and there were 2 windows along the wall near the foot of the bed. The room itself wasn't huge, just enough for the bed and a bit of walking space. I always sleep with the curtains shut and the room completely dark. I hate sleeping with lights on, but for a few nights before this happened, I'd already been feeling uneasy in that room. That kind of fear you can't explain. Like the space itself felt wrong. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. Anyway, sometime around 2 a.m., I came across this video called something like, "How to Make Yourself Faint." And because I was tired, bored, and clearly not thinking straight, I decided to try it. The video said to lie down, take 40 deep breaths, and then on the last one, stand up quickly and try to inhale hard. So I sat on the edge of my bed, thinking if anything happened, I'd just fall back onto the mattress. I followed the instructions, and on that last breath, everything got strange. I didn't black out exactly, but I went into this awful fog. It felt like my brain had slipped sideways. like I wasn't fully there anymore. For a second, I couldn't tell what I was feeling or even where I was. Then it was almost like time skipped. The best way I can describe it is that weird sensation of suddenly realizing time has passed after you fall asleep. Except I was still sitting there. When I came to, my vision was blurry. My room lights were still on, just like I'd left them. As things started to come back into focus, my body began jerking and trembling, and I couldn't control it. It felt like that intense pins and needles sensation when your leg falls asleep, except it was my whole body. After maybe 15 seconds, it stopped. I just sat there, stunned, thinking, what was that? At that point, I decided, okay, enough. I shut off the lights, pulled the curtains closed, and tried to go to sleep. But the fear that had been lingering the past few nights got so much worse. It was overwhelming. I usually fall asleep to scary stories or white noise, but that night I switched to a prayer because I was too freaked out to listen to anything else. Eventually, it calmed me down enough that I drifted off. And then almost immediately, I was dreaming. Or at least, I thought I was. In the dream, I was still in my room. It was dark, exactly the way I'd left it. But I instantly felt that same presence again, only stronger now, like something was standing just outside my room, watching, waiting. Then my focus shifted to the doorway, and there was this woman standing there. But her eyes were not human. They were huge, unnaturally wide, and the whites were this deep, textured red, almost like stone. Her pupils were yellow, sharp and reptile-like, and she was smiling at me. Not kindly, not gently. It was this stretched, taunting smile, like she could see exactly how terrified I was and was enjoying it. Behind her, through the frosted light from outside, was this eerie blue glow, almost like exaggerated moonlight. Everything about it felt theatrical and horrible. The second I saw her, I shut my eyes in the dream. I was lying in bed facing the door, and even with my eyes closed, I could feel her come into the room. That's when I tried to move, and I couldn't. Not even a little. That was the worst part. I fought with everything I had to sit up, to scream, to move my arms, anything. But my body just wouldn't respond. It felt like being trapped inside myself. I kept my eyes squeezed shut and started begging myself to wake up. Then I felt hands on me. Actual hands. I felt my body being shaken, like someone was trying to wake me up fast. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. I was panicking, praying, trying to think of anything safe, and for some reason I thought of my grandma, my real grandma, and held on to that as hard as I could. And then I heard her voice, right in my ear, clear as anything. She said in her language something like, "Hey, kiddo, it's me, Grandma." It sounded exactly like her. Same tone, same softness, the way she used to comfort me. And somehow, even in that terror, it calmed me a little. After that, everything gets blurry. I don't remember exactly how it ended. I just know I woke up at 5 a.m., completely terrified, fully convinced that something evil had tried to get into me that night. And honestly, even now, remembering it still gives me chills. Let me tell you about the first really strange thing that ever happened to me in that house. This was back around the summer of 2016, maybe late June or early July. We lived way out in rural Wisconsin, a good half hour from the nearest town, surrounded by woods and open land. A lot of unsettling things happened in that house over the years, but this was the first one that really stayed with me. I woke up really early one morning, somewhere around 4:30, maybe 5. It was that in-between time of day when it's not fully night anymore, but the sun still hasn't come up. The sky outside had just started turning that pale blue-gray color, and inside the house, everything looked like shadows and outlines. From my bed, I could see through my bedroom door into part of the living room. I remember sitting up, still half asleep, and just staring out there. At first, I didn't even know what I was looking at. I just had this weird feeling that something wasn't right, and I couldn't pull my eyes away. After a few seconds, I laid back down and tried to shake it off, but that feeling only got stronger. So I sat up again and looked toward the living room one more time. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the room, we had this old rocking chair, and there was someone sitting in it. I know how that sounds, and I know it sounds like every creepy story you've ever heard, but I'm telling you exactly what I saw. The room was still dark enough that I couldn't make out details clearly, so all I could really see was the shape of a person. Just a dark figure in the chair, outlined by the faint light coming through the windows behind it. But I could see the head. That's the part I remember most clearly. It rose above the back of the chair, and it looked smooth, almost bald. I just stared at it. That was the weirdest part. I wasn't screaming, I wasn't frozen in pure terror, but I also wasn't okay. It was more like this heavy, unnatural feeling that kept me locked on it. I genuinely felt like I couldn't look away. My younger brother Mason was asleep in the bed across from me the whole time. He didn't move once. And I remember thinking, more than anything, that I didn't want whatever was out there to notice either of us. So I got up, walked over, and quietly shut the bedroom door. That was it. No huge dramatic moment, no footsteps, no voice. It just felt like the only thing I could do. Then I laid back down and listened. I stayed there for a long time, wide awake, waiting to hear something, anything. A creak, a footstep, the rocking chair moving, whatever. But the house was completely silent. Not one sound. At some point, I must have fallen back asleep, because when I woke up again a couple hours later, everything was normal. The house was busy, people were up, morning had started like usual. Later, I told my mom what I'd seen. She didn't seem too concerned. She told me I probably saw the pattern on the blanket draped over the chair, and that my mind filled in the rest. She said it might have looked like my grandmother's face or something in the low light. Then she added that, for some reason, she'd actually slept on the couch in the living room that night. I remember thinking she completely misunderstood me, but I didn't push it. Because I know what I saw. It wasn't a face in a blanket. It wasn't a trick of the light. There was someone, or something, sitting in that chair. I could see the shape of its head above the backrest. It was real enough that I still remember exactly how wrong it felt. Nothing big happened right after that, but more strange things came later. Looking back, that morning felt like the beginning of it all. I've always been somewhere in the middle when it comes to paranormal stuff. I'm open to the idea that ghosts or darker things might exist, but I also think most stories people tell have a normal explanation, or they're just made up. That's how I felt before this happened, and honestly, it's still how I feel now. But there is one experience I've never been able to explain away. This happened around 12 years ago, in the middle of winter. My parents and I had gone to visit my Aunt Lena's grave on the anniversary of her passing. We went late in the day because my parents had both been working, so by the time we got there, the cemetery was only a few minutes from closing. It was just before 5. Not especially late, but in winter it was already getting dim. That gray-blue kind of evening where everything feels quieter than usual. The place was almost empty by then. We'd spent a little while at the grave, and the three of us had just turned to head back to the car when we noticed a woman walking some distance away. What struck us immediately was that none of us had seen her before. She wasn't far enough away that we should have missed her. The cemetery grounds in that section were flat and open, and there really wasn't anywhere she could have come from without us noticing. I don't think any of us said the word ghost in that moment, but there was this strange feeling, like something about it was off. So we kept watching her. She walked for maybe 10 seconds or so, just moving at a normal pace, and then she was gone. Not hidden, not blocked from view, just gone. I know how that sounds, and I'm not claiming I can prove it. I'm only telling you exactly what I saw, and I am completely convinced that this woman vanished right in front of us. 1 second she was there, and the next second she wasn't. My mom is one of the calmest people I know, and even she reacted. She didn't scream or anything, but she definitely got rattled. I still remember her blurting out, "What the hell was that?" And then, "Are you kidding me right now?" She was trying to make sense of it, but you could hear in her voice that she was shaken. My dad handled it differently. Looking back, I think he was more unsettled than he wanted to admit. At the time, he gave this awkward little laugh and said something like, "Well, that was strange. Maybe we just saw a ghost." Then he immediately followed it up with some joke about how we needed to leave before the shopping center parking lot got more terrifying than the cemetery. We were planning to stop and pick up a few Christmas gifts afterward, and I think he was trying to steer us back into normal life as quickly as possible. But the thing is, all three of us saw it. That's what has stayed with me all these years. If it had just been me, I probably would have talked myself out of it by now. I would have assumed the light was weird, or I was tired, or I just filled in the blanks wrong. But it wasn't only me. My parents saw the same woman in the same place disappear at the same moment. I don't. But I do believe something happened in that cemetery that evening, and to this day, I can't explain it. I'm not really the kind of person who jumps straight to ghosts or the paranormal, but honestly, after everything that happened growing up, I still can't come up with a better explanation. The first strange thing I can remember happened when I was about 9. There was some kind of moon event that night, maybe an eclipse, maybe something else, and I had gone outside to look at it before heading back in for bed. Everything felt normal at first. My room was quiet, the house was still, and then out of nowhere, I heard whistling. And not normal whistling either. It sounded distant, eerie, almost like someone was trying to get my attention without being seen. The weird part is, it couldn't have been neighbors. We lived way out in the country, down this long gravel road with woods all around us. The nearest house wasn't close enough for that. I remember looking out my window and seeing absolutely nothing. No movement, no person, nothing. The whistling would come back every now and then, and every time it did, it made my skin crawl. But that wasn't even the part that scared me the most. Some nights, when I was trying to fall asleep, I'd hear drums. We never had drums in the house, and none of my brothers or sisters played anything like that. It was this low, rhythmic beating that sounded almost ceremonial, and hearing it late at night made everything feel wrong. It's hard to explain, but it didn't sound like noise from far away. It sounded close. Too close. The worst thing, though, the thing I still think about, was the whispering outside my window. My bed was set up right next to it, just because that was where it fit best. And every once in a while, I'd be lying there in the dark, and the whole room would be silent. Like someone was standing just outside, whispering words I couldn't quite make out. Not loud enough to understand, but clear enough to know they were there. That terrified me more than anything else. What really gets me is that it wasn't just me. My dad, Rowan, used to talk about how that place always felt off. He'd say that whenever he was out near the tree line, he had this constant feeling that something was watching him. He mentioned hearing movement in the leaves, little rustling sounds, like something was staying just out of sight. And honestly, I understood exactly what he meant. I felt it too. One morning, years later, I woke up really early for work, before sunrise, and immediately felt like something was in the room with me. I know that probably sounds dramatic, but I don't mean I was just nervous or half asleep. I mean I felt a presence, a real one, heavy, aware, like it knew I was awake. And whatever it was, it did not feel harmless. It felt deeply wrong, almost hateful. I had never felt anything like that before, and strangely, I never felt it again after that one morning. That land has been in my family for generations, close to 100 years now, and even before that it was just old, untouched ground. A lot of history could be tied to a place like that. I've wondered before if maybe people lived there long before my family ever did. I don't really know enough about spirits or hauntings or any of that to say what it could have been. All I know is, I didn't used to believe in this kind of thing. Now, I'm not so sure anymore. I've only recently started talking about the stranger things that happened to me growing up. For a long time, it just felt pointless. People either laughed, tried to explain it away, or acted like they understood when they really didn't. I'm not trying to convince anyone anymore. I guess I'm just hoping to share it with people who are willing to listen. When I was younger, my friends and I used to wander through abandoned places out in rural Nebraska. At first, it was just the thrill of exploring old, forgotten houses and barns. But after enough weird things started happening, we half-jokingly started calling it ghost hunting. Not exactly creative, but it stuck. There was one house in particular that never left me. It sat way back from a dirt road, so far out that at night it felt like it barely existed. When you stepped through the front door, there was a small kitchen off to the left, and through a narrow opening on the right was the living room. The place was mostly bare, almost stripped clean, except for a few cabinets still hanging crooked on the walls, and this one old armchair sitting in the middle of the kitchen, like someone had carefully placed it there. And on the arm of that chair was a book. It was huge. I mean, absurdly huge. Thick, heavy, packed with page after page. We brushed the dust off and realized it was an old Connect the Dots book. I remember laughing because it was so strange. This giant book, filled with hundreds of nearly identical puzzles, just sitting there in an abandoned farmhouse. We took it with us, mostly as a joke. On the drive back, my friend Mara sat in the back seat doing a few of the puzzles with a pen she found in my center console. After I dropped everyone off, I forgot the book was still in my car. Over the next few days, I kept noticing it in the back seat whenever I glanced behind me. Then by Friday, after work, I decided I should finally clean the car out and toss it. But when I opened the back door, the book was gone. Just gone. My car stayed locked most of the time, and I was pretty obsessive about that, so the only explanation I could come up with was that maybe one of the doors hadn't latched properly and someone took it. It didn't really make sense, but I wasn't that upset about it. I probably would have thrown it out anyway. Still, I texted Mara and asked if by any chance she'd left it there on purpose, or maybe come back for it. She said no, of course not. So I told her it had disappeared, and that kicked off a whole conversation about the house again. The more we talked, the more uneasy I felt. By that night, we decided to drive back out there and take another look. We went in through the same front door, same little kitchen, same opening to the living room, same silence. And there, in the middle of the kitchen, was the same armchair, with the same giant book resting on the arm. I remember us just staring at it for a second. Then we walked over, picked it up, and wiped the dust from the cover again like we were hoping we were wrong somehow. I laughed, but it came out shaky that time. Not amused, more like my brain didn't know what else to do. We flipped through the pages. Every single puzzle was blank. Not one pen mark, not one line, nothing. The pages Mara had filled in on the drive home were clean, like no one had ever touched them. What makes it even stranger is that we went back to that house more than once after that, and we never saw the book again. Not on the chair, not on the floor, nowhere. It was like it had shown up twice and then decided that was enough. I still can't explain it. I don't know where the book went when it was in my car, and I definitely don't know how it ended up back in that house looking untouched. Of all the things I saw in those years, that's still one of the most baffling. And honestly, it's the kind of thing that stays with you. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it made absolutely no sense at all. I've worked some eerie jobs in my life, but one of the strangest was doing night patrols as a security officer for NSC. Most nights were equal parts interesting and unsettling, and over the years I saw enough odd things that I usually kept my mouth shut. Partly because I didn't want people thinking I was making things up, and partly because I didn't want to risk my job. But this story is different. I wasn't alone. 3 other people were there that night, and every one of us walked away shaken. Let me set it up for you. Back then, I was doing patrols around Beresfield and Thornton. The way the shift worked was simple enough. One officer started at Beresfield at 6 p.m., and another started at Thornton at the same time. Then, around midnight, we'd swap locations and finish the other person's patrol. It was just the routine. Creepy routine, sure, but routine all the same. So, on this particular night, sometime after 1 a.m., I was on the Thornton side when I got a call from the other guard, a guy I'll call Terry. His voice had that edge to it that told me right away something wasn't normal. He said he needed me over at the school in Beresfield, and I told him I'd be there in 5 minutes. When I pulled up, Terry was arriving too, and sitting there already was a police vehicle. 2 officers stepped out, and for a split second, Terry and I made some dumb joke to each other, just trying to lighten the mood. But once the officers started explaining why they were there, the joking stopped pretty quickly. They told us the local station had received a call from one of the classrooms in the school, classroom 6, around 12:45 in the morning. Not a normal call either. When someone answered it, all they heard was a child giggling. That alone would have been enough to unsettle anyone, but in the background there was this soft, tinkling music, like the kind that comes from an old jewelry box with a little ballerina turning inside. I've never liked that sound, not even as a kid. There's just something about it that gets under your skin. The sergeant apparently thought maybe a child had somehow been locked in or left behind, so he sent the officers out to check. Now, this school was fully fenced, tall black fencing, pointed spikes on top, not the kind of place you just casually wander into. Terry unlocked the gate, and the 4 of us headed inside together. We walked through the main glass doors into the front hall. Offices lined both sides, and at the end of the corridor was the main office, where the internal phone system connected to all the classrooms. Then, the second we stepped into that office, the phone rang. Not only rang, it lit up, and the display clearly showed Classroom 6. I remember every one of us freezing for a second. One of the officers said she'd answer it. She picked up, listened, and I watched the color drain right out of her face. Then she said, very quietly, "It's the kid giggling, and the music's playing again." That was enough for me. I said I'd go check Classroom 6, and before anyone could stop me, I was already moving. I ran down the corridor, out through the glass doors, and straight toward the room. The windows stretched across the classroom wall, so I glanced in first. Nothing. No movement. No child. I opened the door and stepped inside, and I can still remember exactly how that felt. The air in that room hit me like ice. Every hair on my body stood up. I had goosebumps everywhere. It wasn't just fear. It was that horrible, instinctive feeling that something was deeply wrong. I turned and looked back toward the office through the glass, and I could see Terry and the two officers staring at me, wide-eyed, waiting. Then I noticed something odd. There was no phone on the teacher's desk. That didn't make sense. This was supposed to be the room making the calls. I looked closer and spotted a phone cord running toward one of the wall cupboards. I opened it, half expecting, honestly, dreading, that I might find a child hidden inside. Instead, there was the phone, tucked away inside the cupboard, and it was off the hook. I could hear the dial tone coming from it. I just stood there staring at it for a second, feeling sick. Then I put the receiver back in place. And that's when I noticed the folding divider wall between classroom 6 and the room next door. I slid it open just enough to squeeze through into classroom 5. The moment I stepped in there, the same feeling hit me again, stronger somehow. My whole body tensed. I didn't even finish checking properly. I backed out, shut the divider, hurried out of classroom 6, slammed the door behind me, and made it back to the office faster than I'd like to admit. I told them exactly what I'd found, and to my surprise, the two officers looked at each other and basically said, "Nope, we're done." They were genuinely rattled. One of them said they were leaving the rest to us. I remember blurting out something like, "That's nice, you've got guns and we've got flashlights." But they were already mentally out the door. One officer's radio crackled, and the sergeant asked for an update on the school call. She told him they'd explain when they got back to the station because they didn't want the rest of the officers hearing it over the radio and taking the piss out of them. He agreed. Then they left. So there it was, just Terry and me. We looked at each other, both of us trying to act steadier than we were, and decided we had to do one more full sweep of the classrooms together. So we did. All 6 rooms. Thoroughly. Nothing. No child, no intruder, no explanation. Once we'd locked everything up, we stood outside classroom 6, both of us shaking a little, both needing a smoke. We lit up and just stood there in silence for a second, trying to process what had happened. And then, from directly inside classroom 6 behind us, came this enormous bang. Not a creak, not a tap, a proper bang. That was it. We didn't hesitate. We ran. Absolutely ran for our lives, locked the place up as fast as we could, got to our patrol cars, and drove out of there. A few minutes later, we pulled into a service station and just sat there talking, going over every detail again and again, trying to make sense of it. We never could. And I'm telling you now exactly as I remember it, because that night stayed with me. It still does. This happened sometime after 2010, and I've had more strange experiences in my life than I can count. Enough that I could tell you story after story. Some of them go all the way back to when I was barely old enough to talk. The first thing I ever tried to describe as a child, apparently, was something I just called the eyes. That was all I could say. The eyes. My parents never understood what I meant. Honestly, I'm not sure I ever did either. But that night at the school, that one was real. 4 of us were there. 4 of us heard enough, saw enough, and felt enough to know something wasn't right. And I truly hope you never experience anything like it for yourself. Hello, Paranormal M channel viewers. We're back again. Thank you so much for always supporting the channel and tuning in to our paranormal stories. And please don't hesitate to send us your own experiences too. Honestly, I love doing this, being here and sharing these eerie encounters with you all. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Still having trouble sleeping? Let us help you sleep better. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Alright, let's get into it. So, let me tell you about this one Saturday that still makes my skin prickle when I think about it. My roommates, Talia and Bree, and I were doing the most harmless, normal thing. We just wanted some cheap apartment decor. You know, thrift store candles, a funky lamp, maybe a crooked mirror we could pretend was vintage. We'd already hit a couple of regular spots, and we were honestly kind of over it, when we spotted this tiny antique shop tucked back from the road like it was trying to hide. From the outside, it looked almost abandoned. The sign was sun-bleached, the paint was peeling in long strips, and the windows were so clouded with dust you couldn't really see anything behind them. But we were like, why not? Because that's how every bad story starts, right? The second we opened the door, this smell hit us. Not just old dust old, more like damp basement mixed with something sharp and metallic, like pennies left in a wet coat pocket. We kind of glanced at each other, did that awkward little laugh people do when they're uncomfortable, and walked in anyway. And immediately, the vibe inside was wrong. It was dim, like the lights were tired. The aisles were narrow and cluttered, and the farther you walked in, the tighter it felt. Like the place was gently squeezing you toward the back. Every little sound seemed louder than it should have been. Our shoes scuffing, a hanger tapping, the soft creak of wood shifting somewhere overhead. The stuff in there didn't help. There were shelves lined with dolls that looked used up, missing eyelashes, chipped hands, one with a cracked porcelain cheek like it had been dropped and glued back together. A couple of old formal dresses hung from a rack, yellowed and limp, like someone had taken them off in a hurry and never came back for them. There was even this little dollhouse on a low table, and I swear, something about it made my stomach roll. Like the furniture inside was slightly warped in a way that didn't make sense, like it had gotten hot and softened and then cooled again. But none of that was the worst part. The worst part was the painting. It was hanging crookedly on the wall, like it had been nudged and nobody bothered to straighten it. It was a portrait of a woman, almost realistic, the kind where you can see the care in the brushstrokes around the mouth and the shadows under the cheekbones. Except her eyes. Her eyes were completely blacked out. Not shaded, not dark-colored, blacked out, like someone had smeared tar straight across them. It was so jarring that my brain kept trying to fix it, like if I stared long enough, the eyes would reappear. And this is the part that's hard to explain without sounding dramatic. The painting felt heavy, like it had weight in the room, like it didn't just exist, it noticed you. No matter where we moved, it felt like it was still watching. Which is ridiculous because it didn't even have eyes. But we all felt it. I know we did because nobody made jokes. Bree went quiet. Talia wouldn't stop glancing back at it, like she couldn't help herself. We didn't buy a single thing. We didn't even finish browsing. We just sort of backed out of the store like we were leaving a room where we'd interrupted something private. The bell on the door jingled when we stepped outside, and the daylight felt weirdly bright, like we'd been underwater and finally came up for air. And I really thought that would be the end of it. But a couple days later, little things started happening in our place. We tried to laugh it off, but we were all sleeping lighter, listening more. And then one morning, this is the part that really flipped a switch. We were heading out, half awake, barely functioning, and we saw it on the hallway wall near the door. A handprint. Not like a smudge. A full, clear, dark handprint. Almost black, like charcoal or soot. Big enough that my first thought was, that can't be ours. We did the sensible thing, or at least we tried to. We told ourselves maybe someone had leaned on the wall with dirty hands. Maybe it was from moving something. Maybe we'd track in grime and not notice. So we lined our hands up on it. All three of us, palms pressed against the wall, comparing like it was some dumb game. None of our hands matched. The print was larger, longer fingers, wider palm. It looked like it belonged to someone who could comfortably palm a basketball. And it was placed at this height that made it even creepier, like it had been left by someone standing right there. After that, We stopped pretending it was all nothing. But the scariest thing, like the thing that still makes my throat tighten, happened a few nights later. I was asleep when I heard this sudden, awful scream from Bree's room. Not a startled yelp, a real scream that jolted me straight upright. I ran in there and flipped on the light, and she was sitting up in bed, breathing hard, eyes wide like she'd just woken up from drowning. Once she could talk, she told me she'd fallen asleep with her hands tucked under her pillow, like she always does. She woke up and they were numb, pins and needles numb, so she started rubbing them to get the feeling back. Then her hand jerked, like an electric shock ran through it, and before she even realized what was happening, her fingers started clawing at her face and neck. Not lightly, not like an itch, like she couldn't control it. She said she tried to stop, but her hands wouldn't listen for a few seconds. She just kept scraping at her own skin until she finally snapped out of it and screamed. When I looked closely, she had these red marks along her jaw and down her neck. Not deep, but enough to prove she wasn't imagining it. We sat there for a long time after that, just quiet, exhausted, freaked out in that stunned way where you don't even know what to say because any explanation sounds too stupid to be real, and any other explanation sounds too terrifying to accept. And I know it could all be coincidence. Old building, stress, weird sleep things. I know. But I can't stop thinking about that shop. The smell, the way the aisles seemed to tighten, and that portrait, those eyes painted over like someone was trying to blind it, but it still didn't matter. Because ever since we walked out of that place, it's felt like something walked out with us. And sometimes, late at night when the apartment goes quiet and the air feels too still, I catch myself wondering if it ever really stopped watching. So, this happened when I was about 9, maybe 10. We were living out in this little village that felt like it was tucked away from the rest of the world. Our house was old and big, one of those places with hallways that seemed normal in daylight, but at night they stretched out and deepened, like the shadows were doing their own quiet renovations. I shared a room with my younger brother, Eli. We slept side by side on a wide bed that squeaked if you moved too fast. My parents slept across the hall, and my grandmother had her own room near the front of the house. My grandpa, Manuel, slept all the way at the far end. That's important. He was so far down the corridor that if he got up in the night, you'd hear it. His shuffle, the floorboards, the little cough he always did before stepping into a room. You'd hear something. That night, though, I wasn't asleep yet. I was lying there in the dark doing what I always did, making stories in my head. Whole scenes, full conversations, like I was directing a movie only I could see. The room was dark, but my eyes had adjusted, and I could make out the dresser, the wardrobe, the outline of a chair in the corner. Eli was already out cold beside me, breathing slow and steady like he was practicing for a peaceful life. And then, at some point, I looked up. Someone was sitting on the edge of our bed. It was my grandfather. He was perched closer to Eli's feet, a little hunched forward, like he'd sat down just to rest his back for a moment. He wasn't looking at either of us. His eyes were angled down toward the floor, and his hands were still. But the first thing I felt wasn't surprise. It was anger. Not annoyance, not irritation, not that I'm disappointed kind of adult mood. I mean anger, raw, heavy, the kind that doesn't belong to someone you've known your whole life. And that's what made my stomach drop, because my grandpa wasn't that man. Manuel was the gentlest giant you could imagine. Broad shoulders, thick hands, a silver beard that made him look like a storybook elder. He was old, well into his 80s, and still stubbornly strong. He worked outside almost every day, moving like the earth still owed him something. He laughed when it was the right moment, and he could go quiet in a way that felt safe, not scary. We loved him like kids love the best part of a day. Whenever he came home, we'd run to him without thinking. So if this was really him, I should have felt comfort. Instead, something inside me just snapped. My skin went tight with goosebumps, like the air had turned thin, and it hit me in the same breath as the recognition. It looked like my grandfather, and it was not my grandfather. I whispered, barely moving my lips, "Grandpa?" No reaction. I tried again, a little louder, my voice shaking even though I was trying to keep it steady. "Grandpa?" He didn't turn, didn't lift his head, didn't even shift his weight like someone who's listening. I don't know why I did it, but I reached my hand out, slowly, carefully, aiming for his leg, just to prove to myself that he was solid, real, human. And my hand went straight through him. Not like a dramatic movie moment, not like I felt energy or got thrown back, just nothing. Like putting your hand through a patch of air that shouldn't be there. And the second that happened, every thought in my head became one thought: run. I didn't plan. I didn't think. I just moved. I slid off the bed and bolted. I ran straight through him. I still don't have good words for what that felt like. It wasn't cold exactly. It wasn't warm. It was more like pushing through a shadow that had decided it could be heavy, like something was there and not there at the same time, and my body knew it was wrong before my brain could even describe it. I burst into my parents' room, tripping over my own feet, and I told them everything in one breath. That Grandpa was on the bed, that his face looked angry, that he didn't respond, that my hand passed through him. My dad squinted at me like I'd woken him up for something foolish. He said I should have been asleep, that when kids stay up too late, their minds start making things. Then, half irritated and half trying to scare me into obedience, he added something like, "If you don't listen and you keep acting up, your grandpa will come sit there again." My mom pulled me in right away. She hugged me tight, warm and solid, like she was trying to press me back into reality with her arms. She told me I'd had a nightmare with my eyes open, that it was just imagination. I wanted to believe her so badly, but I kept thinking about Eli. He was still in that room, still asleep, still breathing like nothing in the universe could reach him. Eventually, I passed out in my parents' room. In the morning, I woke up back in my own bed. Apparently, my dad carried me in during the night. I don't remember it at all. And here's the part that messes with me, even now. After that, I slept fine. No nightmares, no dread, no refusing to go into the room. Just normal sleep, like my brain had filed it away under "Do Not Open." My grandfather lived for years after that. He stayed healthy, sharp-minded, steady, kind. He never turned into someone else. He never grew cruel. He never even raised his voice in a way that would match what I saw. And that's why, when I think back on that night, one detail stays louder than the rest. I had never seen my grandfather angry. Not before, not after. So if that wasn't him, why did it wear his face? And there's another thought that creeps in sometimes, quieter but worse. What if it wasn't the first time it sat there? What if that night was only different because I happened to still be awake? And then there's the question that gets caught somewhere deeper than memory, deeper than fear, the one that makes my chest feel tight if I stare at it too long. When I ran through him, what exactly left the room? Was it him? Or was it me? And if it chose me, why me? Why was I the only one in that whole house, before or after, who who ever saw anything like that. Okay, so I just jolted awake from one of those dreams that doesn't fade when you open your eyes. You know the kind? Where it sticks to you like static? In the dream, it's me, mid-20s, and my younger brother Mason. We're out at dinner with some relatives, and this new couple my family's been hanging around shows up. Everyone's doing the friendly greetings thing, and they've got a daughter with them. Her name's Talia, I think, around Mason's age. She introduces herself, all polite, and my brother doesn't even lift his head. Not like, I'm shy, awkward. Like, blank. Like he didn't hear her. And I'm standing there smiling too hard, trying to cover for him, doing that older sibling thing where you talk enough for two people. Hey, nice to meet you. All that. I even toss in a little joke on his behalf, like, sorry, he's still loading. Because that's what I'd say in real life. Mason's usually not rude at all. If anything, he's kind of charming in a goofy way, so it felt off. Dinner goes by in that dream logic way where you're not sure what you ate, but you remember the vibe. Then it's time to go home, and for some reason we're taking the bus. We're sitting there, and I start giving him a little grief, friendly style. Like, dude, you really just ghosted that girl to her face? I'm teasing, nudging, doing the whole big brother routine. He's annoyed, but it's that familiar annoyed, like we're actually on our way home from something in real life. We're bickering, half laughing, half pushing each other's buttons. It felt so normal. And then, something in my stomach drops. No warning, just this thick dread that comes out of nowhere, like the air changes. I look up toward the front of the bus and see the driver. He's this scruffy guy, maybe early 30s, long hair tucked behind his ears, the kind of dude who looks like he would say, chill, chill, while actively causing chaos. And he's driving like the bus is a sports car, like he's working it, swerving a little, accelerating, way too casual about it. And then, bam! We slam into the back of a small car. In my head it was a white hybrid, something compact. It fishtails and disappears out of view, and my brain expects the bus to brake, to slow, to do anything. But it doesn't. The bus keeps going. I turn and look at Mason, and his face is completely different now, like all the joking is gone. He looks genuinely terrified, eyes wide, shoulders up, like he's bracing. I snap back forward, and that's when I see it. An 18-wheeler. Not like, oh no, we're getting close. Like, the back of it is suddenly right there, filling the whole windshield. And in the dream, it feels like we're going insanely fast, like 90 miles an hour, and the truck is basically standing still. There isn't even time to scream. We hit it. Everything goes black, except it isn't instantly over. I feel it. I feel my body get thrown around like I'm a loose object in a washing machine. That's the only way I can describe it. Like being a tennis ball inside a dryer at the end of a cycle. Tumbling, slamming, spinning, hitting hard edges I can't see. And the whole time, the only thing I'm doing, like on repeat, like my brain got stuck in one groove, is saying, I love you, Mason. I love you, Mason. I love you, Mason. Over and over. Like if I keep saying it, it'll protect him somehow. Then I wake up inside the dream. Not awake in real life, awake in the wreck. It's quiet in that unreal, muffled way, like sound is far away. And I realize I can feel my body, and that's when it gets so horrifyingly real. And then I taste blood. I have never tasted anything in a dream like that before, ever. But I can taste it, metallic and warm in the back of my throat, and it makes me panic because it's too specific, too accurate. I call out, Mason? Because he was sitting behind me, and I hear him. He's alive. He answers, but his voice is small and scared. He keeps saying he can't move. He keeps saying it like he's trying to make it make sense. I use my right arm, my only good arm, to drag myself, inch by inch, twisting around the seat. And it hurts. The pain is weirdly dulled, like it's behind glass, but it's still pain. Real enough that my brain is doing that thing where it wants to shut down just to escape it. I finally get turned enough to see him. He's slumped against the window, eyes on me, but he can't move his arms, can't shift his body, just stuck there, trapped in his own skin, and the look on his face. God, it was the worst part. Not screaming, not dramatic, just pure fear and helplessness. I start telling him it's okay. I don't even know why. It clearly isn't okay. But I'm saying it anyway, like I can stitch the moment back together with words. It's going to be okay. I love you. It's going to be okay. And then I can feel blood in my mouth again, like it's filling up, and my eyelids get heavy. That heavy, sinking, you're about to pass out feeling. And I realize I'm getting sleepy in the dream, which is such a nightmare detail because it feels like dying. So I keep talking, fighting the sleep, telling him to tell our parents I love them, telling him to tell our other brother too. Like I'm trying to leave messages behind because I don't trust I'll get another chance. And then I kind of fade out, like someone dimmed the lights. And that's when I actually woke up in my bed, heart pounding, chest tight, and for a second my brain couldn't accept that I wasn't trapped in twisted metal. Even after I was fully awake, my chest still hurt a little in real life, like my body remembered. So yeah, that's why I'm sitting here telling you this instead of going back to sleep, because that was more terrifying than any nightmare I've ever had. Not because of monsters or anything, but because it felt possible. Because it felt sensory. Because I could taste the blood, feel the injuries, hear his voice. And now I'm just stuck with it. Writing it down helps a little. Not a lot, but a little. Still, there's absolutely no chance I'm closing my eyes again right after that. Not tonight. Not after that one. So, I was about 8, maybe 9, and I'm sitting on the swings at my elementary school playground. Not swinging, not playing, just sitting there, letting my feet drag little half moons in the dirt because I'd wandered off by myself. The funny part is, my parents actually would have been totally fine with it. The school was close, like a straight shot past a couple intersections, but I didn't really know that at the time. So I always took this longer, looping route home. It felt safer in my kid brain, even though it turned a quick walk into this whole 20-minute trek. Anyway, I'm alone on the swings when this pale silver sedan rolls by, slow enough that I notice it. And it's playing this tune, an instrumental nursery rhyme. You know that chiming, dreamy kind of melody ice cream trucks use, where your brain goes, "Oh, that's supposed to be cheerful," but it still makes your stomach tighten. It was like that, but not exactly the ice cream truck song, just close enough to be unsettling. The music gets louder as the car approaches, like normal, but then it passes me and keeps driving, and the music doesn't get quieter. It stays just as loud, like the car never left. I remember squinting at the driver's side, trying to catch a face, anything, but I couldn't. And it wasn't even that the windows were tinted. It looked wrong. Like the inside of the car was steamed up, foggy in a way that didn't make sense, like a bathroom mirror after a hot shower, except it was the whole interior, this hazy blankness that swallowed up any detail. That's when the fear really hit, because now I'm sitting there thinking, okay, either I'm about to get snatched, or there's an ice cream truck somewhere blasting the world's loudest lullaby. And I hated ice cream trucks already because of some creepy TV episode I watched that I was definitely too young to be watching. So I get up and I start walking home, my long way. And this neighborhood, it's big. It's one of those places with wide streets and tons of little side roads. And there's always traffic because it backs onto a big supermarket, and there's a strip mall nearby. On weekends especially, you'd see people unloading groceries, kids biking, cars cutting through. But that day, nothing. I walked and walked, down street after street, turning corners, crossing intersections, and I didn't see a single person. Not one dog walker, not one car, not even someone backing out of a driveway. And the nursery rhyme music is still blasting like it's everywhere at once. That's the part I still can't explain, because it wasn't like it was drifting in and out. It wasn't getting louder or softer like something moving around. It was just there, constant, filling the whole neighborhood like it was coming from the air. And then, because apparently my brain needed extra fuel for panic, I start hearing other sounds too. Mechanical sounds, like wood being cut, like a chainsaw or someone doing construction, that harsh grinding hum. But when I looked around, there was still nobody outside. And a lot of the houses had their curtains pulled or their windows covered, which made everything feel closed off, like the whole area had turned its face away. I swear I was checking behind me every few seconds, scanning driveways, peeking down side streets, trying not to run but also fighting the urge to sprint the whole way home. Then, finally, I turn onto my street, and the music starts to fade. And right as I step onto my front porch, right when my hand is reaching for the door, it stops completely, like it got cut off, clean, instant. I stood there for a second just staring at the door, kind of frozen, because I knew I wasn't imagining it. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have earbuds. There was nothing on me that could have made noise. And it's not like a real ice cream truck would be loud enough to follow me perfectly for 20 minutes without ever getting closer or farther. And I'm telling you, I never saw the car again. I never saw any car. No footsteps, no shadows, no sudden engine sound behind me. Just that song, hanging over everything until I got home. I've replayed it a million times in my head, trying to force it into something normal. A prank, an echo, a neighbor's speaker, anything. But it never fits. I still don't know what happened that day. I just know it felt like something noticed me. Like something followed me without actually being there. And even now, if I hear a nursery rhyme melody drifting through the air at the wrong time of day, my stomach drops. Every single time. Hey, so I've got this weird little story that's been sitting in the back of my mind for a long time, and I figured I'd finally say it out loud to someone who won't immediately laugh me out of the room. A while back, late night, doom scrolling, you know the vibe, I stumbled across this anonymous post on some grimy corner of the internet. Not even one of the cool corners. The kind of place where everything feels like it was typed under a flickering basement light. The post was about something called Varnock. Not a demon, not an angel, just described as a forgotten god. That phrase hit me in this oddly tender way, like, forgotten by who? And how do you even forget something that big? Anyway, I actually found the post again recently. It didn't vanish or get mysteriously scrubbed from the world or anything dramatic like that. It's still out there. I just can't tell you exactly where, because it's one of those things you don't bookmark when you're reading it at 2:40 a.m., with your heart doing that small, nervous gallop. What made the post feel different wasn't the name, it was the precision. It described an altar, and the instructions were so specific, they felt like they were written for someone who already knew the rules. It wasn't like, light a candle and say a prayer. It was more like, Make a shape in the ground with lines about the length of your forearm, and if you build it with stone, the height has to land on a certain kind of counted measurement. No explanation, no reasoning, just this quiet insistence. It matters. And then there was the offering part. The post called it a sacrifice, but honestly, it sounded more like a ritual gesture, something symbolic. The example they gave was a simple clay pot, broken on the spot, either with your hand or with your foot, while something personal was sealed inside. Not anything violent or horrific, just something of you in the emotional sense, like a written secret, a confession, a tiny scrap of a photograph, some small piece of identity you wouldn't normally hand over to anyone. The post claimed that after that, you could speak to Varnock, or at least get something back. Not a voice booming from the sky, more like a response, a shift, a feeling of being answered. At first I rolled my eyes, I really did, but the name stuck to me like a burr, Varnock. I'd catch myself thinking it randomly while making coffee, or walking home, or staring at my ceiling. And the more I remembered the details, the strange geometry, the arbitrary sounding rules, the more they stopped feeling arbitrary. They felt coded. Around the same time, I was messing around with altered states more than I should have been. Nothing glamorous, just that phase where your brain is trying to peel the wallpaper off reality and see what's underneath. And I'll be honest, in those stretched out, unsteady moments, my thoughts about Varnock got louder, more persistent. Like when you keep thinking you hear your phone buzz, even when it hasn't. And look, I know how that sounds. I know substances can make your mind desperate to connect dots that were never meant to meet. I'm not telling you this like it's proof of anything. I'm telling you because it's the honest timeline. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. Not belief, curiosity. The kind that feels like an itch right under the skin. And nothing supernatural happened. No shadows moved. No whisper slid into my ear. No cosmic revelation. But afterward, something changed. Not outside me, inside me. It felt like I understood the post in a way I didn't before. Like the details stopped feeling random and started feeling organized. Like I'd been looking at scattered puzzle pieces, and suddenly I could see the picture they belonged to. Not because someone handed me the missing pieces, but because my brain finally found the frame. That's the best way I can describe what I mean when I say I gained knowledge. It wasn't like learning facts. It was more like context. Like a story you didn't realize you already half knew. And then one day you hear a familiar melody, and your body remembers the lyrics before your mind does. And yeah, I'm fully aware this could just be my brain doing what brains do. Latching onto something because I fed it attention. Especially at a time when my perception wasn't exactly trustworthy. But still, sometimes I'll think of that name, Varnock, and I get this small, quiet feeling like I'm standing at the edge of a room I've never entered. And somehow I still know what it smells like inside. Okay, so I want to say this carefully because I know how it sounds. I'm not someone who thinks death is some big cosmic conspiracy. I get it. Life ends, and we lose the ones we love. But there have been a few things my family lived through that, I don't know, they leave this itch in my brain that won't go away. And yeah, maybe it's grief talking. Maybe it's my heart trying to make sense of pain. But let me tell you why I keep circling back to this feeling that something wasn't right. So, a little over a year and a half ago, we lost my childhood cat. His name was Milo. We knew he was nearing the end, and I stayed with him through all of it. I held him while he took his last breath, right there in my arms. And I'm being honest when I say that's an image I never want to relive. You expect pets to leave someday, but you never really expect it, you know? What messes with me is what happened not long before he started going downhill. There was this brutal storm. One of those nights where the rain hits the windows like it's trying to get in, and the thunder feels like it's shaking the bones of the house. It was late, like 2 in the morning, maybe even closer to 3. And my mom, Jenna, heard Milo making this awful sound. Not just meowing, not just scared cat noises, screaming. It was so intense she bolted out of bed. When she came out, she found him planted in the middle of the living room, body stiff, eyes locked on the big front windows like he was staring straight through them. And here's the part I always hesitate to say out loud, because I'm still trying to decide if I believe it myself. My mom swears that night he was fighting something. Not like chasing a bug, not like spooked by thunder, like he was protecting us. Like there was something in the house, or trying to get into it, and he stood between it and us. My mom isn't religious. She's not a ghost stories person. But she's always been sensitive, I guess. The kind of person who knows when someone's about to call, or walks into a room and can tell immediately if people were arguing. And she swears Milo took the hit for us. Do I fully believe that? I honestly don't know. But do I believe something happened that night? Yeah, I do. Then, fast forward, December 18th, 2024. My younger cat, Luna, died suddenly. And when I say suddenly, I mean it still doesn't feel real. She'd had a clean bill of health not that long before. She was the kind of cat who had this confident little walk, like she owned the whole house. And then one day she was just gone. No long warning, no gentle transition, just ripped out of our world. At first I told myself it couldn't be connected. Different cat, different time, different situation. But after she died, the house felt off. Like the air had weight. Like everything was tilted a little wrong. We didn't talk much about it because what do you even say when you're already barely holding it together? But my mom hinted, carefully, like she didn't want to plant the thought in my head, that maybe something had come back. That maybe whatever Milo faced back then took Luna. And I know how that sounds. Trust me, I've said I'm not crazy in my head more times than I can count. But there's one more piece, and it's the part that keeps me from dismissing everything as grief brain. Because years before either cat died, like well before, my grandmother started talking about this man. Not a real person, not a neighbor, not someone she could point out in a crowd. An unseen man, a presence. Someone she felt like was stalking her. She never described him clearly. It was always vague, like if she gave him shape, it would make him more real. Just that man. Always there, always watching. Sometimes in reflections, sometimes in doorways, sometimes just a certainty in her bones that he was nearby. She moved states, far away, and she still saw him. For years. And yeah, I know the obvious explanation. She's older. Maybe it's her mind. Maybe it's stress. Maybe it's something neurological. I've tried to be grounded about it. I want the grounded explanation. But the weird thing is, when she moved into assisted living, it stopped for a while. Months. Like the signal went quiet. And then one day she said, very calmly, "He's back." No drama, no fear-mongering, just certainty. And here's the part I don't love admitting. I think I might have seen something too. Once, when I was a teenager. My family thought it was a loved one visiting, something comforting. But the older I get, the more my memory of it shifts into something darker, like a black shape where a person should have been. Not detailed, not human, just there, watching. So that's where I'm stuck. What is this man? Is he connected to what happened to Milo during that storm? Is he connected to Luna's sudden death? Is he connected to what my grandma has been living with for years? Or is this what grief does? Does it pull random tragedies into a single storyline so the pain feels less pointless? If I'm being fully honest, I lean toward grief. I really do. Because grief is powerful, and it's creative, and it wants answers so badly, it'll build a whole universe to get them. But then I remember one thing that keeps me awake sometimes. This figure was in our story before the deaths ever started, and I can't shake the feeling that something about that matters. Hey, it's been a minute. I'm not really someone who posts online. I'm more of a quiet reader, you know? But I've been sitting with this for a while, and I keep coming back to it. So, I figured I'd just tell it the way it happened. So, my partner Mara and I moved to Buenos Aires recently. Well, not the center, more like a calmer neighborhood that still feels alive. We came because it honestly feels like a place where young people can build something, and we were ready to start our life together for real. Nothing fancy, but steady jobs, decent pay, enough to rent a small 2-room place with a separate kitchen, which sounds like a tiny detail, but trust me, when you cook a lot, it matters. The building itself is old, like you can feel it in the walls. The kind of place where doors swell when it rains and the hallway lights buzz even when everything's fine. It's not scary exactly, just aged, lived in. When we moved in, the landlord mentioned the woman next door, an elderly neighbor named Elena. He said she was sweet, liked to chat. And yeah, she really does. I've always had a soft spot for older people. So many of them spend their days alone. Sometimes all it takes is 10 minutes of listening to make someone feel human again. Anyway, maybe 2 weeks after we settled in, Elena rang our bell and asked if I could help with her door. It was sticking. I went out, fixed it, and then she did what she always does. She talked. About the weather, the building, her knees, the city, her childhood, all of it. And then, kind of casually, like she was telling me the time of day, she mentioned the woman who lived in our apartment before us. She said the previous tenant was older too, sick for a long time, and that she had died. In the bedroom. Our bedroom. The same room Mara and I slept in every night. Now, here's the thing. Before Elena ever told me that, Mara had already been saying she felt uncomfortable at night. Not in a dramatic way, just uneasy, like she couldn't fully relax. She'd wake up and stare at the corner of the room, like she was trying to figure out what she'd heard or felt. One night, this was maybe our first month there, she whispered that she'd felt the blanket tug, like someone had pulled it toward the foot of the bed, at around 3 a.m. After Elena told me about the death, those little things stopped feeling like maybe the apartment's settling, or maybe we're stressed, and started feeling directed, like something was aware of us. And then stuff started happening to me too. I'd feel the sheets move when I was completely still. Once, I felt something cold brush my ankle, like fingertips, quick and light. Our bedroom door would swing shut with this heavy click even when there was no breeze, no open windows, nothing. Not every night, but often enough that it became a pattern, and patterns mess with your head. This felt restless, like something stuck, like a person knocking on glass from the other side. So we did something simple. We asked a local church if someone could come bless the apartment. Not because we were trying to wage war with a ghost or whatever, more like setting a boundary, saying, "This is our home now. If you're here, you don't get to hurt anyone." A priest came. He said prayers, walked through the rooms, sprinkled holy water, the whole thing. The apartment felt lighter afterward, not instantly perfect, but calmer. And then, about 2 weeks later, I had the most vivid experience I've ever had. Half dream, half something else. I don't even know what to call it, but it felt like I moved through it in stages, like 3 separate scenes. First stage, I'm asleep, but I know I'm in my bed. I can feel the mattress, the weight of the blanket. And then I feel a cold hand clamp onto my shoulder, the shoulder closest to Mara. It wasn't her. I knew it immediately. That kind of knowing doesn't come from thought. It's just certainty. Second stage. Suddenly, Mara and I are both sitting upright in bed. The room is dark, quiet, freezing. And I'm telling her, we need to cleanse. We need to wash it off. And then we're doing it, both of us, pouring water over ourselves like we're washing in the darkness. No talking, just that soft sound of water and breathing. It felt ritualistic, like something we were being pushed to do. Third stage. This is the part that still makes my stomach tighten. I'm upright again, in the same cold darkness, and I hear the building buzzer. In our place, the intercom is way back near the kitchen, so you have to cross the whole apartment to answer it. So I get up and start walking down the hallway. And as I pass the front door, I see her. A woman, old, heavy-set, dressed like someone from another era, thicker fabric, shapeless clothes. But her face was wrong. It was there, but there were no features, no eyes, no mouth, no nose, just blank skin where a face should have been, like it had been smoothed over. And she wasn't walking. She was gliding toward me. I panicked and shot backward, away from her, and then I saw her drift toward the bedroom. And my first thought was Mara. Mara's in there. She's sleeping. She doesn't know. So I ran to the bedroom, and the second I crossed the doorway, I snapped awake. Like awake. Eyes open, heart slamming. The room was dark and still. No buzzer, no footsteps, nothing. But I could feel her. I could feel a presence at the bedroom entrance, like someone standing there watching me. Not attacking, not angry, just there. Silent, heavy. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and checked the time. 3:01 a.m. And I remember whispering, "No. No way." Because it felt too exact, too lined up with everything else. When I finally stopped, the room felt quieter. Not empty, but calmer. Like whatever was pressing in had loosened. I didn't tell Mara right away. I didn't want to scare her more than she already was. She wasn't sleeping well to begin with, and I felt like if I said, "Hey, I saw a faceless woman glide toward you," she would never close her eyes again. But things were escalating, and I couldn't keep it to myself forever. So instead of making it dramatic, we focused on something gentle, something respectful. We spoke to Elena again, carefully, and asked if she remembered the name of the woman who had lived there before. She did. I won't say it here, but we got her full name. We bought a small rosary, and one night we lit a candle and prayed for her. Not like go away, but more like rest. Like if you're here, you don't have to be. After that, the apartment changed. The tugging stopped. The doors stopped slamming. Mara started sleeping longer stretches. The air didn't feel tense anymore. And here's a detail I didn't realize until later, which makes the timing even stranger. The night that vivid dream happened was in early November. And in a lot of Latin America, November 2nd is tied to honoring the dead. Maybe that's coincidence. But I don't know. All I know is, for the first time since we moved in, it finally felt like our bedroom belonged to the living again. So before I start, I just want to say, I know this could have been nothing more than a deeply unsettling coincidence. I'm not religious, I'm not into anything occult, I don't mess with rituals or any of that. But what happened left me so rattled that I still get that tight feeling in my chest when I replay it, so I'm just going to tell you exactly how it went down, and you can decide what you make of it. This was in December 2025, late in the month, like a random weeknight. I'd been fine, normal routine, decent headspace, no big stress spiral, no weird stuff going on at home. I take my meds the way I'm supposed to, and they've never done anything dramatic to me. I'm a heavy sleeper. I've never had sleep paralysis. My dreams are usually the boring kind that evaporate the second I open my eyes. But that night, I fell asleep like usual, and then it was like I dropped straight through the floor. The first thing I remember is this endless black space, like a void, with smoke curling around everywhere, thick and choking. And I'm not floating, I'm not standing. I'm pinned down on this slab of stone that is so hot I can feel my skin blistering against it. I'm screaming, like full-throat animal screaming. I'm naked. My arms and legs are restrained wide, spread out like I'm being displayed. And I just knew, with that horrible dream certainty, you know? I just knew I was about to die. Then the darkness shifts into a full-on hellscape. Flames everywhere. The air feels heavy and toxic, like breathing is a punishment. I'm burning, panicking, desperate, terrified of what comes next. And the sounds, I can still hear them in my head, like grinding metal, machinery shrieking, distant crying, other people, I think, screaming the kind of screams that sound like they'll never end. And then these disgusting wet noises, like slurping and growling, coming from all around me. That's when I realize I'm surrounded. Hundreds, maybe thousands of these small, devilish creatures. Not big, towering demons, more like 2 feet tall, maybe 3. They're crowded in tight, jostling like excited kids at a parade, except it's not cute, it's horrifying. And they're touching me, stroking my arms, my legs, my stomach, like they're waiting their turn, like they're thrilled I'm there. And then one of them climbs up onto my chest. It's calm about it, like it's done this 1,000 times. It pulls out a blade, short, ugly, sharp, and drives it into my throat right under my chin. And then it drags the blade downward, slowly, like it's unzipping me. It slices all the way down my body, straight through my abdomen, and I can feel it. I'm crying so hard I can't even breathe, and I'm begging, and it doesn't matter. I look down, still fully aware, like I'm awake inside my own nightmare, and my insides are exposed. And here's the part that makes no sense, but was so vivid it makes me nauseous. My ribs aren't normal. They peel open outward on both sides like they're unfolding, like wings. And they stretch so far, like ridiculously far, like long banquet tables running off into the distance. The weirdest detail is they don't even look like human ribs. They look like barbecue ribs, like the kind you'd see in a restaurant, glossy, sauced, almost cartoonishly meaty. I remember thinking, in the middle of all that pain, why do they look like food? And before I can even process it, those little creatures start feasting. They swarm. They bite and chew and pull and gnaw, making these awful, satisfied noises, like they're in pure bliss. And I feel every bite, every tug, every tiny mouth on me. I'm screaming so hard my throat feels shredded, and I'm thinking, how am I not dead yet? How am I still here? And then I wake up. I jolt up, gasping like I've been held underwater. My pajamas are soaked through. It's still dark, around 5 a.m., something like that. My husband, Ethan, was already awake, staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. He tells me I was digging my nails into his arm hard enough to leave marks. He said I was thrashing, jerking, making these strained sounds, and he thought I was having some kind of medical emergency, so he shook me awake. I just sat there shaking, trying to convince myself it was only a nightmare. Only a nightmare. Only a nightmare. And then, because life doesn't pause just because your brain decided to traumatize you, I got up and went to work. I felt drained and strange all morning, like my skin didn't fit right. But I told myself to drop it. Lock in. Be normal. My office is in this weird spot, off a service road near a busy highway, but surrounded by dense woods. It's quiet. Like, too quiet. We almost never get random visitors. No foot traffic, no people wandering in, nothing. If someone pulls into our lot, it's usually because they absolutely meant to be there. Around lunch, I'm chatting with my coworker, Lena, and somehow it comes up. I don't even know why I told her, but I did. I gave her the whole story, the void, the heat, the creatures, the ribs. She's making that horrified face people make when they're entertained, but also genuinely disturbed. Then we move on. Work stuff, emails. The day keeps rolling. About an hour later, Lena looks out the window and goes, "Oh my God, no way, look." I turn my head, and I swear to you, a barbecue catering truck is pulling into our parking lot. Not even like a generic one. A real branded truck, clear as day, rolling right up like it belongs there. A woman in uniform comes in, super friendly, cheerful, holiday energy. She introduces herself and says she's stopping by nearby businesses to remind them they do holiday catering, and if we're planning any kind of office gathering, to keep them in mind. She hands us her card, a menu, the whole spiel. And then she pulls out this insulated bag and goes, "And here, free samples. Happy holidays." She sets down 2 little boxes and leaves like it's the most normal thing in the world. The second I open the lid, my stomach drops. Cornbread, and a portion of barbecue ribs. My skin went cold hot, goosebumps everywhere. Lena just stared at it, and I could tell by her face she was feeling the exact same thing, like our brains were trying to reject reality for a second. I actually had to sit down because my knees felt weak. It was like the dream reached out and tapped me on the shoulder in broad daylight. And that's it. That's the whole chain of events. I keep circling the same questions. Was my brain doing that thing where it turns stress into horror? Was it dredging up something I haven't dealt with? Was it trying to tell me there's something in my life that's eating me alive and I'm ignoring it? Or was it genuinely just a coincidence so specific it feels personal? I don't know. I honestly don't. I just know I've never had a nightmare that detailed, that physical, that real. And I've never had the universe, fate, chance, whatever you want to call it, answer it back with a box of ribs at noon. Hey, can I tell you about something that happened a few nights ago? I'm still trying to put words to it because it didn't feel like a normal dream. It felt too close to being awake. So I'm lying in bed, trying to fall asleep. Nothing unusual, just that drifting, heavy feeling. And then out of nowhere, my body hits that sudden drop sensation, like the floor disappears under you for a split second. I've felt that before, so at first I thought, okay, just one of those sleep things. But right after that, this sound slammed into my ears. Not a gentle ringing, not the usual high-pitched buzz. It was intense and weirdly organized, like waves, like the pitch was rising and falling in rapid pulses, almost like something was sweeping up and down through different frequencies. It felt like it filled my whole head. And then I slipped into what I can only describe as a dream, except I didn't feel fully asleep. It was like I was caught in the doorway between sleeping and waking. My eyes were closed, but I could see the dream vividly. And at the same time, I felt my body in bed, like I was barely moving, barely there, stuck halfway. In the dream, this presence started talking to me. Only it wasn't vague or symbolic like dreams usually are. It was direct. It told me there was some kind of punishment on me, like a curse for things I'd done, choices I'd made. The words were heavy, like they were meant to sink in and stay. And after that, everything went warped. The whole scene twisted into something almost psychedelic, colors bending, shapes stretching, reality turning rubbery. Suddenly, I was in a school building, like a hallway outside a classroom. A woman, maybe a teacher or some kind of administrator, walked right up to me like she'd been waiting. She held up this picture of me, but it was horribly distorted, like my face had been pulled apart and shoved back together wrong. She smiled like she had leverage, like she was enjoying it, and she said she was going to post it everywhere for everyone to see. And then she told me I was done, kicked out, expelled. That's when it got even more unsettling, because while I was still in the dream, I also felt like I was in my bed. And I remember thinking I'd opened my eyes, except I don't think I actually did. I felt trapped inside myself. But somehow, in that hazy state, I reached for my phone and started texting. I messaged my girlfriend, her name's Mira, and I told her I'd been expelled, like it was real and happening right then. Like I needed her to know immediately. But even inside the dream, something kept glitching. A thought cut through. Wait, we're not together anymore. Like the dream was trying to rewrite reality, and I couldn't tell what was true. Then the scene shifted again, and someone else showed up, one of Mira's friends, a guy named Noah. He was standing too close, looking at me with this cold, blank expression. And then he started coughing, hard, and suddenly he spit blood. It splattered across my face, warm, shocking. I remember the disgust and panic hitting me at the same time, like my whole nervous system lit up, and I still couldn't move. That was the worst part, the paralysis. I couldn't properly open my eyes. I couldn't lift my arms. I couldn't even fully sit up. I felt like I was trying to scream through cement. Then I heard something in my apartment. I heard the front door open. And instantly, this rush of thoughts flooded in, intrusive, loud, relentless, telling me that the presence from the dream had crossed into my real space, that it had come for me, that it was in my apartment, that it knew I was awake. And right as I committed to that, the sound came back. The same ear-splitting wave tone, only stronger. So strong it felt physical, like pressure being driven straight into my ears. It surged in these brutal oscillations, up, down, up, down. So overwhelming I genuinely thought I might go deaf. It felt like falling again too, but amplified, like being yanked downward through the bed. And then, snap. I was back, fully awake, in my room, in my bed. My heart pounding like I'd been running for my life. My ears actually hurt, like I'd just been blasted by something. And the first thought that hit me, before anything else, was, call an ambulance. That's how scared I was. Not, oh, that was a bad dream, scared. More like, something is wrong with me, and I might not be safe, scared. And what messes with me most is this. The whole time, it didn't feel like I was asleep in the normal way. It felt like I was awake, trapped in a nightmare that had leaked into the room with me. I keep replaying it, trying to figure out where the line was, where dreaming ended and reality began, because in that moment, I honestly couldn't find it. So, before my great-grandparents passed away, they lived for decades in this quiet, kind of in-between place. Semi-rural, a little removed, with woods pressing in close behind the house. Not totally isolated or anything, but the neighbors were few and far enough that the nights felt big, like the dark had room to stretch. After they were gone, my grandma, Mary Ann, ended up inheriting the house and a couple acres with it. And she's still with us, thankfully, but she wrote her will years ago, so the place will go to another family member when she passes. That family member, Eli, actually lives there now. Takes care of everything. Mows, fixes, checks the property line, the whole thing. Because one day, it'll be his house. Eli and I are close, so I've gone out there a few times just to hang out or crash for the night. But the weird part is, before Eli moved in, I hadn't slept there since I was little, back when my great-grandparents were still alive and the place felt normal in that old house way. The first time I stayed over as an adult, Eli set me up in the guest room, except it's not really a guest room. It was my grandma's childhood bedroom. And I know this is going to sound dramatic, but that room freaks me out. It did then, and it still does now. There's nothing in there that's obviously creepy. It's just wrong. Like the air doesn't sit correctly. It's got this old dresser that smells faintly like wood polish, a vanity with a hairbrush so old it looks like it's been waiting for someone for 50 years, a bed, a mirror, and a little bench that never seems to be in the right place no matter where you move it. The mirror is the worst part. I always turn it around so it faces the wall, every single time, without even thinking about it. And the bed is pushed against the wall in the center of the room, so there's open space on both sides. I hate that, because no matter which direction you face, there's this blind spot behind you. Like something could stand there and you'd never know unless you turned your head. That first night, I tried to be tough about it. I really did. But I ended up falling asleep with the lights on and a comfort movie playing on my laptop. Something easy and familiar, like the kind of thing you put on when you want to feel 8 years old again. Eventually, I drifted off, and nothing happened. I woke up fine. Still didn't like the room, but I survived it. The next time I visited, though, I just couldn't do it again. I couldn't put myself through that weird, tense, half-awake kind of fear. So I told Eli I'd sleep in the sunroom instead. And let me explain the layout, because it matters. There's a sunroom on the side of the house. One whole wall is just windows, looking out toward the trees. Right next to it is this long hallway that connects the sunroom to the kitchen. The washer and dryer are in that hallway, and there's also a door leading out to the garage. At the far end, you hit the kitchen, and from there, the rest of the house branches off. Honestly, the sunroom should have scared me more. A wall of windows facing the woods at night? That sounds like the start of a horror movie. But it felt cleaner somehow, less heavy. I just closed the blinds, stretched out on the couch, and fell asleep pretty easily. And then, sometime in the night, I woke up. I didn't sit up or open my eyes right away. I just kind of surfaced into awareness, like my brain snapped to attention. And I heard footsteps, and then they started moving. Slowly. They came from the kitchen, down that long hallway, past the washer and dryer, steady and unhurried. Not shuffling, not dragging, not like an animal, just footsteps. Human paced, measured, like someone walking with intention, but not in a rush. I stayed completely still. And here's the thing, I could move. I knew I could. So it wasn't sleep paralysis. I wasn't frozen. I was choosing not to move because I didn't want to confirm what I already felt. The footsteps reached the doorway to the sunroom. Then they came into the sunroom. And then they stopped. Right in front of the couch. I didn't open my eyes, but it felt like someone was standing there, looking down at me. Not breathing loudly, not fidgeting, just present. The silence went on long enough that I started counting without meaning to. My heart was pounding, but my body stayed weirdly calm, like it was trying not to attract attention. And then, after what felt like forever, the footsteps turned around. They walked back out of the sunroom, back through the hallway, and returned to the kitchen. And then, nothing. No cabinet doors, no sink, no fridge hum changing, just quiet again. When morning came, I tried to play it casual, but I asked Eli straight up, "Hey, did you get up in the middle of the night?" And he blinked at me like I'd asked if he'd gone jogging at 3 a.m. He said, "No, I passed out. I shut my door. The dog was in there with me the whole night." And I believed him, completely. He wasn't the type to mess with me about something like that, and also, the dog would have reacted. Even if Eli had gotten up, the dog would have followed him or barked or something. But those footsteps were distinctly human. That's what sticks with me. The weight, the spacing, the rhythm. Now, stuff like this doesn't immediately send me into a meltdown. I've always been, sensitive to weird things. Odd dreams, sudden gut feelings, that kind of thing. It's not constant, but it happens enough that I've stopped acting surprised. And it runs in my family, too. Different relatives, different stories, all of us kind of shrugging like, yeah, that checks out. I've even had dreams about my great-grandparents before, like them showing up and saying things that felt oddly specific, and then I'd mention it to my grandma later, and she'd get quiet in that way people do when something hits too close. I wasn't especially close to my great-grandparents, not really, but they've still popped up in ways that felt purposeful. Except there's this other layer to it. My great-grandfather, Wesley, wasn't a good man. And I'm not saying that lightly. He hurt people. He left damage behind him that didn't just disappear because time passed. I'm not particularly religious, but if there's a place for people who did what he did, if there's a hell in any real sense, then more than one person in my family believes he belongs there. And whenever I've seen my great-grandparents in dreams, it's like, she's clear, and he's not. Like he's there only faintly, like a shadow that can't quite fully step into the room. That's always been the feeling. But that night in the sunroom, I had this nagging intuition, sharp and quiet at the same time, that it was him standing there. Not threatening exactly, not warm, not loving, just there. Like a presence that didn't care whether I was comforted, only that I knew it existed. And what scares me most is that I still don't know why. So, I've got to tell you about this house. It used to belong to my grandparents, and I swear, it has always had something in it. Not like movie jump scare something, more like a presence that's been living alongside the family for as long as anyone can remember. My partner, Eli, he's 29, and I'm 30, ended up inheriting the place last spring, and once we started actually living in it full time, it got weird. Not run for your life weird, just strange in a way that makes you pause mid-step. Here's some background that matters. My grandmother, Marisol, was the real deal. She practiced for years, and when I was little, she taught me a lot of what she knew. Quiet, respectful stuff. The house is still heavily protected because of her. Like, you can almost feel it. People come over and say it feels calm, even if they can't explain why. Both Marisol and I were always sensitive too. The kind of sensitive where you can walk into a room and instantly know if something is off, even if nothing is happening. And according to her, there was always this shadow in the house. She told me she'd seen it a handful of times over the years, just a dark shape, no features, no face. She never thought it was malicious. Actually, she always said it felt familiar, like it reminded her of her older sister, Celeste, who passed away years ago up in Nova Scotia. But after my grandfather died in 2020, the house felt quieter in one way and louder in another. The first time I saw the shadow for myself was in 2022. I was in the main bedroom, stretched out on the bed with my grandparents' old dog curled against my legs. Eli and I were still pretty new back then, early relationship stage, when you're still learning each other's habits. He was across the room messing with his charger, half turned away, not really paying attention. And then I looked up. In the doorway, there it was, just black. Human-shaped, but not exactly. Like someone cut a person out of the darkness and stood it upright. No eyes, no mouth, no details at all. But I knew it was looking into the room. And listen, this is the part that always sounds unreal when I say it out loud. I didn't panic. I just stared right back, fully locked in, like we were in some silent little standoff. It lasted long enough for it to feel like time got thick, a couple minutes at least. Then it simply faded. Not like it walked away, more like it stopped being there, the way fog thins out. Eli finally turned and noticed me staring at the doorway like I'd been hypnotized, and later he told me, "That was the scariest thing I've ever seen you do. Please never do that again." Which, fair. After that, honestly, things stayed pretty calm for a while. Like the house had made its point, and we'd reached some kind of quiet understanding. Then we started moving in. It was late March, and I was alone in what we turned into an office, putting together a desk that came in about 1,000,000 pieces. I remember pausing with a screw in my hand because I suddenly got that feeling. The one you get when you're not actually alone, even though you are. It didn't feel threatening, not even creepy, just present. Like someone had entered the room and stood behind you, waiting politely. And I didn't speak out loud. I didn't want to. But in my head I thought, really clearly, let me finish this and then I'll head out for the night, okay? And I'm not exaggerating. Whatever it was, it just left. The air changed. The pressure lifted. Like it understood the boundary and stepped back. The next time I saw it was months later, in September. I was in the bathroom washing my face. I felt something beside me and assumed it was Eli or one of our cats brushing past my ankles. Totally normal feeling. Same shadow, same blankness, same quiet, observant stillness. And again, my body didn't react like it was in danger. It was more like, you again. Like seeing a neighbor you don't hate, you just don't fully understand. So I met its gaze, if you can call it that, for a few seconds, let out this little, tired sigh, and then I went right back to rinsing my face like I was finishing a chore. Now, here's where it gets even stranger. Lately, it's been copying sounds. Not voices, not calling names, not pretending to be one of us, thank God. But it's mimicking the everyday noises we make without thinking. Eli has this habit of flicking his lighter open and shut when he's distracted. Just the click, click, click. And I'll hear it, from the hallway, when he's not even home. I'll hear the soft shuffle that Marisol used to make, the exact pace she had. Slow, careful steps that scrape just slightly on the old floorboards. And then I'll remember she isn't there anymore, and I'll get this cold little pinch in my stomach. Our roommate, Jace, has a heavier step than Eli, more heel than toe. And sometimes I'll hear Jace's exact gait crossing the living room when he's upstairs with the door closed. And I have this stupid little thing I do, where I tap the wall lightly with my fingertips when I walk down the hall. I've done it since I was a kid, like a nervous rhythm. Every once in a while, I'll hear those same tiny taps, but I'm standing completely still. It's not escalating, it's not slamming doors or throwing things, it's not trying to scare us. If anything, it feels like it's learning us, repeating us, like the house is recording the people inside it and playing them back when it feels like it. And that's what confuses me, because we've never invited it in. We've never spoken to it directly. We've never named it, never asked questions, never responded when we hear the sounds. We don't acknowledge it out loud, even when we both notice something at the same time. We keep our boundaries very clear. We do joke sometimes, mostly to keep it light, that maybe it's my grandfather checking in. But the longer this goes on, the less sure I am. It doesn't feel evil. It doesn't feel angry. It doesn't even feel lonely. It just feels present, like it's been here longer than we have, and it's going to be here after us too. So now I'm at this point where I'm planning to do some quiet, protective work away from the house. Nothing dramatic, nothing confrontational, just enough to get a better read on what this is and what it wants, if it wants anything at all. But yeah, that's the house. Protected, peaceful, and full of memories that sometimes walk around on their own. Hey, so this is kind of hard to admit out loud, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because keeping it in my head has made it feel bigger. I'm 17 in a few months, and for the last few years, since I was about 13, I felt this intense, unshakable pull to be wearing to this contact interview. If you could be speaking very head. I felt this intense, unshakable pull. The last fourth teen has been only new through old articles and documentaries. Not a celebrity, not a fictional character, a real person who did real, horrifying things. In my head, I call him Damon R now, because even saying his real name started to feel like I was giving it oxygen. And just to be clear, I'm not proud of this. I'm not romanticizing what he did. What he did was disgusting. I know that. I've known it. That's part of what scares me. I can hate what someone represents and still feel hooked by the idea of them, like my brain keeps circling the same dark drain. It started like curiosity, the kind where you watch one video and then another, but then it turned into something that didn't feel like curiosity anymore. It felt weirdly personal, like a thread tied from him to me, like I'd somehow wandered into the orbit of something I didn't mean to touch. For a long time, the dreams were the worst part. They weren't the blurry, random kind of dreams. They were sharp, specific, places I recognized. My hallway, my bedroom, my school parking lot, this little restaurant that looks like one we have near home. In the dreams, he'd show up like he belonged there. Sometimes he'd talk. Sometimes he wouldn't even need to. He'd just stand and look at me like he already knew me. And I know how that sounds. I do. But in the moment, it felt like being watched in a way that went deeper than sight, like pressure on the air. There were nights I woke up and still felt it, like the dream didn't end cleanly, like it left a residue behind. A few times, I swear I felt my mattress dip, like someone sat on the edge. I've heard soft footstep sounds when the house was quiet. Once, I was walking down the hallway and felt this quick tug at my ankle, like a little pull and release. I froze so fast my heart felt like it slammed into my throat. I'm not religious. I don't even know what I believe exactly. I just believe energy can linger, that some things don't dissolve as neatly as we want them to. And when I'm being honest with myself, I've fed it. I've fed it on days when I've spent hours reading, watching, scrolling, replaying his face, his voice, the quotes, the footage, like I'm studying him, like I'm trying to solve a puzzle that doesn't have a prize at the end. That's what happened recently. I've been thinking about him almost non-stop, texting a friend about it, watching clips, letting myself fall into that rabbit hole again. By nighttime, I felt keyed up and strange, like my mind was buzzing. And then I had this dream that felt so real, it made my stomach drop when I woke up. In the dream, I was going out to dinner with him, like an actual date. I'd already eaten earlier, but I was excited anyway, like I didn't care. I remember telling my sister, in this too bright, almost manic way, "He's a serial killer from the 80s, like it was some dramatic fun fact, and she looked at me like I was out of my mind, more scared than interested. At the restaurant, he sat close, closer than normal, and kept watching me like I was the only person at the table. He slid his hand under the table and gripped my thigh, like he was testing boundaries, like he wanted to see if I'd flinch. And here's the part that makes me feel sick to say. I wasn't scared in the dream. Not the way you'd expect. He was charming in that polished, predatory way. Handsome, smooth, confident. Like he knew exactly how to play the room. He held doors. He smiled at strangers. He acted like a gentleman, and the whole time, I felt this awful, confusing sense of chemistry. Like my brain was responding to the attention, even while another part of me was screaming, "This is wrong. This is dangerous. This isn't love. This is a trap." In the dream, he looked exactly like the videos. Exactly. Same stare, same posture, same way of moving, like he owned every inch of space around him. When I woke up, I didn't feel relieved. I felt watched. My eyes went straight to the mirror across my room, and I had this panicky thought, what if that's how he comes through? Like the dream was a door, and the mirror was a second door. I lay there with my blanket pulled up, listening to every tiny sound, trying to convince myself I was being ridiculous, while also not being able to shake the feeling that something had noticed me back. And that's the scariest part. This idea in my head that I'm chosen, like I'm singled out, like he saw me, liked me, attached to me, and never stopped watching. I'm telling you all of this because I'm trying to hold it up to the light instead of letting it live in the dark where it grows. Because if I'm being really honest, this doesn't feel spiritual in a beautiful way. It feels like my mind got stuck on something frightening and intense, and the more I focus on it, the stronger it gets. Like a loop, like a fixation that pretends to be fate. So I'm trying to do something different now. I'm trying to stop feeding it. I'm trying to take breaks from the videos, stop scrolling late at night, stop handing my brain the exact imagery it uses to build these dreams. I've started leaving a soft light on. I've started grounding myself, touching something cold, counting my breaths, reminding myself, I'm here, I'm safe. Dreams can feel real and still be dreams. And I think I need to talk to someone in real life about it. A counselor, a therapist, a trusted adult. Someone who won't laugh, but also won't hype it up into something it isn't. Because whether it's anxiety, fixation, stress, or my brain mixing fear with attention, I don't want to feel like I'm living under someone else's shadow. If you've ever felt pulled towards something dark like this, like it hooks into you, if you've ever had dreams that cling to you after you wake up, I'd really like to know. Not because I want it to be true, but because I want to feel less alone, and I want to learn how people loosen the grip of it. Because I don't want to be chosen, I want to be free. So this happened at some ridiculous hour, somewhere around 3:25 in the morning. I only know that because I checked the time right after, with my heart still kind of thumping like, okay, what was that? Lately, I've been in this really reflective headspace, thinking a lot about spirituality. I've been meditating most nights for, honestly, over a decade, and I'm very familiar with sleep paralysis. I know what it feels like. I know how to steer it, and I've even intentionally slipped into that state during meditation before. I just want to say that up front, because this wasn't that. Not even close. That night, I went to bed later than I meant to. I'm the kind of person who gets overstimulated easily, and light is a huge thing for me. My eyes are sensitive, and I sleep best when it's absolutely dark. So my room was the way I always keep it. Blackout curtains, no glow, no streetlight leaks, nothing. Pitch black. I fell asleep on my stomach, face angled toward the wall. And then I woke up because, out of nowhere, this bright light pushed into my vision. Even with my eyes shut, it was too intense to ignore. Like it found me through my eyelids. I opened my eyes and rolled over, and right there, right beside my gecko's tank, someone was standing in the middle of my room. Not like a shadow, not like a vague shape, like a person, a presence, something that had no business being there. For a split second, I was so stunned that my brain tried to file it under sleep paralysis, because what else do you do with something like that? So I blinked, hard, like multiple times. I even pushed myself up, fully sitting. And they were still there. And the weird part is, I wasn't scared. I expected fear. I'm prone to anxiety, and if anything should have set me off, it was this. But what I felt most was this irritated, sleepy annoyance. Like, seriously? Right now? I'm just trying to rest. They were about, maybe 5'10", somewhere around that. Their gender wasn't obvious at all. Nothing about them gave me that kind of male-female read. And they weren't looking at me, not even a little. No dramatic turn of the head, no stare, no acknowledgement. Honestly, it was almost funny, like I wasn't the interesting thing in the room. They were focused on whatever they were holding. It looked like some sort of device, like a tablet kind of, but not exactly. Bigger than a phone, flatter than what I'm used to seeing. And they were fiddling with it like they were checking something or adjusting something, calm as could be. What they were wearing was hard to make out, because the top half of their body was glowing. I couldn't tell if it was a hooded long-sleeve shirt or something more like a hooded cloak. The hood shape was there, but the details got swallowed by the brightness. And when I say bright, I mean bright. I have never seen white like that in my life. Not from a screen, not from headlights, not from the sun bouncing off anything. This wasn't just light. It was like pure white, clean, endless, almost unreal. Like their clothing, or their whole being, was emitting this solid, radiant whiteness, as if someone turned the concept of white light up past what my eyes could even handle. And there I was, sitting up in bed in a room that should have been completely dark, staring at this glowing figure next to my little terrarium, thinking, why are you here? And why do you look like you're updating something? So, we rolled into the Sphinx Resort on Friday, January 16th. And I'm not even kidding. I'd already convinced myself it was going to be weird. I did so much research before booking it. Reviews, old forum posts, people saying the place felt outdated, like it swallowed light. And then there were the stories. The tragedies people swear happened there over the years. I'm a pretty spiritual person, and I've been sensitive to energy since I was little, so I was trying to stay grounded and not spiral before we even stepped through the doors. At first, when we walked in, I didn't feel anything dramatic. I just noticed how dim it was, kind of tired looking, like it needed a full reset. But I told myself, whatever, it's a hotel. We're here to have fun. Me and my boyfriend, well, I'll call him Ethan, we got checked in, went up to the room, and everything seemed normal at first. Temperature was fine too, which mattered because I'd read a bunch of complaints about rooms being either freezing or boiling. We go downstairs to gamble for a bit, maybe 40 minutes, and that's where things started to shift for me. I had wandered a couple machines away from Ethan, playing a slot by myself, and this weird uneasiness just slid over me. Like that feeling when you're sure someone's behind you. I kept looking over my shoulder, even though there was no logical reason. And then I hear this sound, like a quick swish, right by my ear. Not in the distance, right there. Like something passed close to my head, like a gust of air, but we were indoors. I tried to laugh it off. We'd had an early flight. I was tired. My brain could be doing that thing where it fills in gaps. But then, a few minutes later, I hear a man call my name. Like clearly. Not a whisper. More like someone I knew, like a friend or a cousin, calling from just a couple steps behind me. And my name isn't common. Like, I almost never hear it out in the world. So I turn around immediately. And there's nobody. Not even like, oh, maybe I missed them. No, there wasn't a single person anywhere close. It was this open pocket of space around me, like 30 feet in every direction, and I'm standing there with my stomach suddenly ice cold. That was the first time I thought, okay, something is off. I tried to brush it aside again because what else do you do? We head back upstairs later, and when we open the door to our room, it hits us like a wall. Hot. Like sauna hot. I look at the thermostat and it's set to 85. I swear it wasn't like that earlier. And I remembered reading posts about thermostats mysteriously changing in that hotel. And I hate admitting this, but I started doing that thing where you try to talk yourself out of your own instincts. Like, maybe I hit a button. Maybe housekeeping did something. Maybe it defaulted. Anything to make it make sense so I could sleep. The next day we weren't in the hotel much. We were out doing stuff, so it was easier to ignore. But we were staying high up, somewhere in the 20s, in one of the towers, and the floor was silent, like unnaturally quiet. We barely saw anyone. No doors opening, no footsteps, nothing. Which sounds nice, but it made it feel empty in a way that didn't feel peaceful. More like abandoned. And I dreaded leaving the room alone. I'm being so serious. The hallway felt dim and heavy. The elevator rides were the worst. Every time I stepped in, I got this sensation like I wasn't alone, even when I was. And in those quiet pockets, hallway corners, waiting areas, the little stretches where it's just you and the hum of the building, I would get overwhelmed by this negative energy that felt almost physical, and then my emotions started getting unpredictable. I would feel dread for no reason. I'd get homesick out of nowhere. I cried over things I normally wouldn't even blink at. Ethan started changing too. He was irritated, edgy, like everything was getting under his skin. We argued more in those couple days than we had in months. And it didn't feel like normal couple tension. It felt like we were being pushed into it, like the room amplified every anxious thought and turned it into a fight. At night, I couldn't sleep in the dark. I left the lights on, which I never do, and I kept hearing these little clicking noises, like a light switch being pressed, or buttons on a landline phone. Little mechanical sounds. Not constant, but enough that every time I'd start drifting off, it would snap me back awake. And the creepiest part? One morning I woke up before Ethan, super early, everything quiet, no TV, no noise, and I heard the same button press sounds again, like something was interacting with things in the room. My mom was staying in another section of the hotel, using a different elevator bank. She told me later she swore she saw a man in a white hat standing near an employee-only area behind a cafe. She looked away for a second, then looked back, and he was just gone. And that space was supposedly off limits, like not somewhere a guest would casually be. By the last full day, me and Ethan both looked exhausted, not just tired, defeated, like something had drained us. He admitted something that honestly scared me. He said he'd never been suicidal in his life, but while we were there, he kept getting this intrusive, hopeless feeling, like a dark voice pushing him toward the edge. He even said, "It feels like this place is trying to break us up." And I remember just sitting on the edge of the bed, feeling this thick heaviness in my chest, like a dark blanket had been dropped over me. I've never felt that kind of energy in a building before, ever. It was immediate, almost like my body recognized it before my mind could explain it. I felt physically sick sometimes, like deep sadness was living in the walls. And the whole time, it felt like someone's in the room with us, or walking beside me in the hallway, even when there was no one. I've always been curious about paranormal stuff. I've always kept an open mind. But that experience didn't just make me more curious, it genuinely scared me. Like scared me to my core, to the point where after we left, I couldn't stop researching, trying to find out if other people had felt it too, especially in the towers. Because I swear to you, it didn't feel like we were just staying in a hotel. It felt like we were somewhere we weren't wanted.